Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. The 9 reincarnations are unleashed, and the sickly villain Heroine arrives. Chapter 21. Breakfast was quickly spent in silence. After simply packing some clothes, Shen Shucho left the Blackstone town where he had lived for 4 years. Shen Shucho didn't bring many things, only 2 packages. Most of them were Zhang Qianzhou's clothes, even though Shen Shucho promised to buy them for her elsewhere. Zhang Qianzhou was still reluctant to throw it away. She said it was bought by her husband. Usually if there is a tear in these clothes, Zhang Qianzhou will feel distressed for a long time and secretly wipe his tears. Before leaving, Zhang Chashan sent a carriage. 1 big and 1 small got on the carriage, and left Blackstone town and drifted away under the expectant eyes of everyone. Finally the bad guy is gone. It took us so long that we should have left long ago. If you ask me, they would have died on the way. Right, the townspeople behind the scenes were sarcastic and even began to use vicious words. Okay, stop saying a few words, Zhang Chashan said with a frown. Only then did everyone who was chattering behind him shut up. The 2 people here, 1 large and 1 small, drove the carriage and left Blackstone town very quickly. Zhang Qianzhou was hiding in the carriage and was in a very depressed mood without saying a word. Shen Shucho, who was on horseback, often heard the sad sobs of the little girl coming from inside. Shen Shucho's heart seemed to be tightly grasped by a big hand, almost suffocating him. He didn't know how to comfort him, because the pain in the second stage would only be greater. He was getting closer and closer to death, leaving this world almost before his eyes. Before they knew it, the carriage had been traveling for a day, and their destination was the Tianwu dynasty. It was the most prosperous imperial capital, and it was also the cemetery where Shen Shucho was about to die. With every step the carriage took, Shen Shucho's heart became heavier. The next day, a dark cloud enveloped Blackstone town. When it was just dawn, a group of bandits who came from nowhere broke in. They make no distinction and kill anyone they see. The sounds of fighting and screams echoed in the gray sky and earth in the early morning. Bodies and blood littered the streets, staining the entire land red. The bloody scene was as tragic as hell on earth. This one-sided killing lasted for a long time, and no one in Blackstone town survived. Shen Shucho didn't know about this, and even if he knew it, he wouldn't have the slightest fluctuation in his heart. If it weren't for the system, Shen Shucho would have wanted to kill these people. In the blink of an eye, they had been on the road for 3 days. Fortunately, they had brought enough dry food. Judging from the distance, it would take at least 4 days to walk from the imperial capital. In the past few days, except when eating, Zhang Qianzhou would say a few words, and usually he would hide alone in the carriage gloomily. He is not as clingy to Shen Shucho as he was before, and he will keep yelling at the side. Shen Shutang only paid attention to Zhang Qianzhou's changes and sighed helplessly. Where are we going, sir? Zhang Qianzhou walked out of the carriage, his eyes empty and sorrowful. Shen Shucho patted his little head lovingly and said, Sir, I will take you to the imperial capital. What is the imperial capital like? Have you been there, sir? Can you tell Qianzhou about it? Zhang Qianzhou has never been to other places. In her world, it is only as big as Blackstone town. My heart can only tolerate 1 book feud. Sir, I have never been there, but it is very big and bustling, and there are a lot of delicious food there. When you get there, I will buy you a lot of delicious food and a lot of beautiful clothes. Shen Shucho has never been to the imperial capital. He has been in Blackstone town since he came to this world. Although I have never been there, it is the imperial capital of the Tianwu dynasty after all, so how can it be compared to this tiny place? Will there be a home for us there too? Zhang Qianzhou blinked and asked, his voice revealing a hint of longing for home. Shen Shucho responded melancholy for a moment, we will have a home there, sir, I promise you. Although this promise will eventually disappear, Shen Shucho still hopes that the little girl can be happy at least for now. Sure enough, Zhang Qianzhou's complexion gradually improved, and his mood gradually came out of the gloom. Then when the time comes, I will choose our home. Zhang Qianzhou's voice had a hint of joy. Okay, Shen Shucho agreed with a smile. Zhang Qianzhou's sick expression was filled with a smile. In her heart, she longed for what her home in the imperial capital would be like. There, no one would call her an unlucky girl anymore. There should be no one to kick them out again. You should be happier there than in Blackstone Town. What will the new home be? So, anyway, a home with a husband is the best home. In the next few days, Zhang Qianzhou's chattering words could be heard in Shen Shuchou's ears. Most of them revolve around what kind of furniture to buy and where to choose it for the imperial home. Then there is the question of whether there is anything strange and interesting in the imperial capital. Shen Shuchou didn't feel annoyed and always replied with a smile. 5 days have passed since we started on the road, and we still have the last 2 days to go to the imperial capital. After passing through a lush green forest, Shen Shuchou decided to stop and rest for a while. The lush green space is just perfect for the horses. From the east side of the forest, the gurgling sound of the creek could be heard. Tying the reins of the carriage to the tree, Shen Shuchou took the kettle and headed towards the direction of the stream. Sir, I'm going too. Zhang Qianzhou couldn't sit still in the carriage, and followed him with cheerful steps. As he approached the forest, Shen Shuchou discovered that there was a temple located here. Judging from the dusty appearance, it must have been in a state of panic for a long time. When passing by the mountain temple, Shen Shuchou suddenly had a strange feeling of being stared at from behind, but he didn't think much about holding Zhang Qianzhou and continuing to walk. Soon, 2 figures, one large and one small, landed on the edge of the flowing stream. Shen Shuchou held a kettle next to the rock to catch the clear water pouring down the hillside from underneath. Sir, this place is so beautiful. Zhang Qianzhou stared at the clear stream swirling among the green mountains and forests, like a silver satin. Zhang Qianzhou had never seen this scene before in Blackstone Town. Shen Shuchou said, if you like it, then we can stay longer. It was rare for Zhang Qianzhou to have a chance to see the scenery, and once he arrived in the imperial capital, he almost never saw it. Zhang Qianzhou murmured, it's a pity that this is not home. Zhang Qianzhou didn't want to stay with her husband here forever, but no matter how beautiful the scenery was, it couldn't match the warmth of home. Shen Shuchou's movement to collect the water stopped and he didn't reply. After a while, Shen Shuchou filled 2 bags of water bottles and started to return to the original route. Walking through the forest, Shen Shuchou heard the faint sound of weapons clashing in his ears. Shen Shuchou did not stop and continued to return along the original path. But as the footsteps got closer and closer, the sound of weapons clashing became closer and closer. The smell of blood wafted into the air, accompanied by shrill screams. Shen Shuchou immediately stopped and hid aside with Zhang Qianzhou. Looking through the gaps in the intricate branches, I saw 2 groups of people confronting each other in front of the originally dilapidated mountain temple. Several corpses lay scattered on the muddy ground. Judging from the situation, the body on the ground should be the person on the left. On the left there are only 2 women in gorgeous clothes and a guard holding a knife. On the right, there were at least dozens of people, all of them armed with long swords and fierce eyes. In this case, it seems that bandits are robbing homes. Shen Shuchou, who was hiding in the dark, his eyes darkened, which just blocked his way back. Moreover, the battle between the 2 sides has ended. Even if they take a detour at this moment, they will be discovered once they set off. Shen Shuchou really didn't want to care about this, but a trouble suddenly stood in front of him. The 2 of them were very close. Wen Qingning, it's hard for you to leave now even if you have wings, so just follow us. A man with a hideous scar on his face on the right said coldly. The girl named Wen Qingning had beautiful eyebrows and eyes, wearing a green embroidered luo skirt, her willow-like figure trembled slightly, and she supported the hand of a woman with an equally beautiful appearance. Who sent you here? Wen Qingning's voice was as clear as a swallow. Miss Wen, there's no need to ask such a stupid question. Even gods can't save you in this situation. You'd better face the reality and follow me. The scarred man said. Wen Qingning's face turned pale and she gritted her teeth. I'll go with you, can you let my sister go? If I die together, if I leave together. The beautiful girl said with tears in her eyes. Wen Qingning looked at the scarred man with a resolute look, hoping that he could give a satisfactory answer. Unfortunately, the scarred man just shook his head and said, someone asked for the 2 young ladies of the Wen family by name, so no one can leave. Wen Qingning's beautiful face was pale, and her eyes were filled with despair. Miss, go quickly, I'll stop them. At this time, the guard holding a knife on the side resolutely rushed towards the scarred man opposite. The next moment, the scarred man stepped forward with a long knife in his hand at a very fast speed. Tear. The sound of the blade cutting through flesh and blood was heard. The guard's body fell to the side, and warm blood flowed out along the wound on his neck. A mere fourth-rank official dares to wield a knife. Take the two young ladies and go. Remember to be gentle. The scarred man ordered coldly. Looking at the crowd pressing forward step by step, the two girls of the Wen family fell into despair. There were green forests all around, and they were both weak women. Even if they ran, where could they run? In despair, Wen Qingning quietly touched the hairpin in her hair. She would never let this group of people catch her back even if she committed suicide. Is Yu Ning afraid? Wen Qingning said resolutely. Sister is not afraid, and Yu Ning is not afraid either. Wen Yu Ning shook her pale face, holding a hairpin in her hand. Stop them quickly. The scarred man noticed the clues of the two girls and hurriedly spoke to stop them. The two young ladies of the Wen family immediately grabbed the hairpin and were about to commit suicide. Ah! In this tense situation, a crisp ah suddenly came from the forest. The movements of everyone were instantly stagnant. The scarred man's bloodthirsty eyes swept over instantly. Who's there? Shen Shucho looked back at Zhang Qianzhou, who was covering her mouth. Zhang Qianzhou also knew that she had done something wrong, and she didn't dare to look at her husband. She just accidentally stepped on a branch, and under the influence of the severe atmosphere, her heartbeat accelerated, so she unconsciously shouted, "Oh! I'll say it again, who's there? Come out now." The scarred man's cold voice continued to come. Shen Shucho suddenly felt helpless. He really didn't want to care about the mess here. Even if the two women were about to be taken away at any time, Shen Shucho planned to remain indifferent. Just wait until they leave before coming out. Now that they are discovered, they have to get involved. Alas, forget it, Shen Shucho said in his heart. Then let Zhang Qianzhou stay where she is. Shen Shucho walked out of the forest calmly in a simple white dress. As Shen Shucho appeared in everyone's sight, the scarred man's eyes were fixed on her. It was clearly a female voice that spoke just now. Why did a man come out? The scarred man's eyes were full of vigilance, but as he looked around, he did not feel any threat from her. Could it be that this was just an ordinary person passing by? But even if it was an ordinary person, the scarred man was not going to let him go, and everyone who saw this scene would die. The two young ladies of the Wen family here were also surprised and said, "Oh, it was a female voice, why did a man come out?" Wen Yuning suddenly remembered something and whispered, "Sister, isn't this the man we saw passing by here half an hour ago? I remember there was a little girl behind him." After Wen Yuning said this, Wen Qingning also remembered it immediately. It's a pity that I have implicated others. Wen Qingning sighed. Sister, why do I feel like this is like the hero saving the beauty in the book? Wen Yuning's eyes were shining with little stars and her delicate face was full of expectation. Wen Qingning shook her head and said nothing. Her sister usually liked to read some street novels when she had nothing to do. How could there be a master who would appear here and happen to save her? Come out, second, don't hide any of them. Quote, the scarred man said in a casual tone. Since they are ordinary people, it's easy to deal with them, just kill them casually. It's like accidentally stepping on an ant while walking on the road. Do you care? And won't care. I didn't even look at it, and I even felt that my shoes were a little dirty. Shen Shucho's expression was calm, and there seemed to be no one in his eyes, and he said calmly, I am enough alone, why do I need to? Shen Shucho's relaxed look made the scarred man laugh endlessly. I hope your mouth will be as hard as this when you die. The scarred man showed a cruel smile. The already ferocious face was now even more terrifying with the wide grinning mouth. Brother, just let me come. I guarantee he will die miserably. A man on the side walked towards Shen Shucho with a knife in his hand and a ferocious look in his eyes. Shen Shucho's eyes did not waver, and he picked up a long sword stained with blood from the ground. Then with a gentle wave of his hand, the blood stains fell off naturally. The mirror-like sword body bloomed with an icy cold light. Zheng, the sound of the sword piercing the air was heard in the air, penetrating through the forest. The scarred man's pupils shrank sharply, and the hair on his body exploded. A threat of death enveloped him directly. Shen Shucho, who just now had no momentum in his eyes, was now like a dragon out of the sea, carrying Jingxiao's power. The subordinate just now was 3 steps in front of him. Looking at Shen Shucho, who picked up the sword, he sneered, and immediately prepared to kill this arrogant ant with one blow. Slow. The scarred man was about to stop him. Then he saw the sword in Shen Shucho's hand move. The ordinary sword strike seemed to follow a slow trajectory, but the scarred man could not catch it with his naked eyes. Click. The sword was unsheathed, as if something was broken. Bright red blood flew into the air, and a huge head was thrown high. Boom. Headless, he lost his virginity and fell to the ground. There was silence. Everyone looked at the man in white holding a sword not far away with shocked expressions. What's even more surprising is that there is not a drop of blood on his body. Even the sword used to kill people has no trace of blood at this moment. How is this possible? He clearly used a sword, but there was no blood at all. Gulu. The scarred man swallowed hard, his face looking as ugly as a dead mother. Wen Yuning shook her sister Wen Qingning's arm in excitement at this moment. His face was excited, as if he was saying, "Look, I was right." "Who are you and why did you get involved?" the scarred man said with an ugly expression. "Didn't you call me out?" Shen Shucho said strangely. Upon hearing this, the scarred man instantly wanted to slap himself twice to make you talk bad. "If you leave now, you can pretend that nothing happened, otherwise the people behind me will not let you go," the scarred man said nervously. "Are you mentally ill? You asked me to come out, and now you want me to leave. What do you want from me?" Shen Shucho said calmly. "PFF'd. Wen Yuning suddenly smiled, and then she saw someone looking at her and immediately covered her mouth. The scarred man's face was as black as charcoal, and he knew in his heart that this man was definitely not someone he could deal with. Because he could literally kill them all by himself. Who this person is cannot be unknown in the world. But no matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't figure it out. Who is this master on the Zhonghu list? How come I can meet a master in this crappy place? Could it be that these masters all like to live in seclusion in the mountains and forests? The scarred man cursed inwardly. Then he thought of a way that seemed to be a way to survive and immediately looked at Wen Qingning and said, "Miss Wen, it is Lin Yuan who wants to arrest you. We only use money to do things. I hope you, sir, have enough money to let me go." Wen Qingning's face stiffened when she heard Lin Yuan's name. Even Wen Yuning did the same. She didn't expect that the person who wanted to arrest her would be Lin Yuan, because this person had made a baby marriage with her and was her nominal fiancé. Now this fiancé actually wants to arrest her. Why is this? Why did he do that? Wen Qingning's face turned as pale as paper and asked the scarred man. The scarred man shook his head and said, "I don't know very well, but it seems that I want to give you to someone to please you. As for who that person is, I don't know." These words were like a thunderbolt hitting Wen Qingning's head. In an instant, she understood the whole story. He also knew who the person Lin Yuan wanted to please was Zhao Hongye, the third prince of the current dynasty. Zhao Hongye was obsessed with women all day long and caused harm to many women among the people. He left behind a lot of sins, but since he was the third prince, everyone basically turned a blind eye. Even the emperor. "I don't care about his son." Zhao Hongye had pursued her, but she rejected him. After so many times, Zhao Hongye threatened that one day he would get her. Wen Qingning didn't care at first, because her father was the prime minister of the dynasty, and she thought Zhao Hongye didn't dare to do anything to her. But she never expected that she would be informed of her journey with the Chamber of Commerce this time, and she only told her fiancé Lin Yuan about it. The Lin family is one of the richest merchants in the Tianwu imperial capital. Although no one in the family holds an official position, their status is not comparable to that of ordinary rich merchants. All this comes from the help of the Wen family. After all, the two young people have an engagement, and they are in-laws, so they can't help each other openly or secretly. This time, they didn't expect to be intercepted and killed. Now only 2 sisters of the Wen family are left in their convoy of 30 people. The funny thing is that this business trip is related to the Lin family, but what is more desperate is the truth told by the scarred man. Lies don't hurt people, the truth is the sharp knife. This knife directly cut Wen Qingning into the abyss of despair. It was even darker than before. The man she loved would actually do such a thing to her. If she gave it to Zhao Hongye, She could imagine the consequences with her toes. How could Lin Yuan not know what kind of scum Zhao Hongye was? If he was not the third prince, he would have been torn into pieces by 5 horses. From young girls to young girls, even married women and widows, as long as they were beautiful, they could not escape his palm. Now her lover actually wanted to secretly send someone to capture her and give her to such a beast in human clothing. Why did he do this? Was it because I was not sincere enough to him, or was it because the Wen family did not help the Lin family enough? Wen Qingning wanted to ask him in person why he treated her like this. Wen Qingning suddenly seemed to have figured it out and smiled palely. Yes, no matter how good the Wen family was, they were just prime ministers, and no matter how scum Zhao Hongye was, he was still a prince. What the prime minister can give, the prince can also give. On the contrary, what the prince can give, the prime minister cannot give. Wen Qingning felt that her heart was in pain, as if countless needles were piercing it. She couldn't say a word. 2 lines of clear tears hung on her beautiful face. The whole person became listless and was supported by Wen Yunning. The scarred man here didn't care so much. Anyway, he had already told the truth. Miss Wen, I have told you everything I know. I wonder if you can let me go. Just pretend that I have never been here today. The scarred man said. Wen Qingning was in a daze with lifeless eyes and did not reply. Wen Yunning looked at Shen Shucho with her beautiful eyes. The scarred man killed so many of them. It's not so good for him to ask for mercy now. But now the person who controls the situation is this handsome young man in white clothes. The embarrassing thing is that Wen Yunning doesn't know him. Please kill them, young master. The Wen family will definitely reward you generously. Wen Yunning said with beautiful eyes. The scarred man's face suddenly changed and he shouted angrily, "You fool, I've told you the truth. You don't keep your word. You killed so many of my followers, and now you tell me that you have a grudge and a debt. How can it be so easy?" Wen Yunning gritted her teeth and said. Then she looked at Shen Shucho again and said, "Please help me, young master." Seeing this situation, the scarred man followed closely and said, "Young man, I can also give you money, just let me live, and you can pick the 2 young ladies of the Wen family." In the scarred man's mind, Shen Shucho must have taken a fancy to the beauty of the 2 young ladies of the Wen family. Wen Yuning's face was tense, fearing that Shen Shucho would agree to the scarred man. Shen Shucho had never thought that there would be such a thing, and saw that both of them looked at him. Shen Shucho said calmly, "I have nothing to do with your affairs, and I don't want to get involved. Since you asked me to come out, then let's all stay." In this simple sentence, the scarred man and his group had their ending. The scarred man looked extremely ugly, and he wanted to slap himself on the spot, saying that he was a bad mouth. "I'm going to survive this time, and I won't be bad-mouthed easily in the future." "Are you really going to fight to the death?" The scarred man pretended to be calm. "Brother, this kid is alone, let's kill him together. We are more than one person, so we are not afraid of him alone. Each person with a knife can cut this kid into 5 pieces." The scarred man's men said one after another. "Then let's kill this kid together." The scarred man's heart moved, and he ordered several people. Suddenly, several people looked murderous and rushed towards Shen Shucho. Seeing this, the scarred man turned around and fled out of the forest. At the same time, he felt lucky for his cleverness. He just needed to let these people die. They couldn't see it, but the scarred man could see it too. Shen Shucho was not something they could kill together. In an instant, with Shen Shucho as the center, a gust of wind blew around. Crash! The branches swayed, the forest leaves flew all over the sky, and the shadow of the sword turned with the wind. The cold light only lasted for a moment, and a bright sword light burst out under a ray of scorching sun. Shen Shucho's eyes flashed coldly, and with one strike of his sword, life and death were turned around. Wen Yunning covered her mouth with disbelief in her beautiful eyes. The few people who were in a fierce mood 1 second were surrounded by a cold sword light, and their blood was soaring in the next second. After dealing with these people, Shen Shucho casually threw the long sword in his hand into the distance. Zhang! The long sword made a sharp roar that pierced the air, tearing apart all obstacles with the force of thousands of troops. The scarred man felt a warning in his heart and looked back as if he was feeling something. Just one glance caused the ghost to escape, and the fear of death enveloped him like a haze. The next moment, a sharp sword passed through his chest and nailed him to a thick tree trunk. There was still a look of fear in his eyes. His life was quickly passing away, and he died within a few breaths. After settling the matter of blocking the road, Shen Shucho didn't even look at Wen Qingning and shouted towards the back of the woods, "Qianzhou is gone. Here I come, sir." Zhang Qianzhou ran out of the forest and took a curious look at the pretty woman not far away, then hugged Shen Shuchou's arm with one hand. Shen Shuchou smiled, picked up the kettle and headed in the direction of the hitched carriage. But when he walked to the carriage, Shen Shuchou was dumbfounded. The horse that had been tied to a tree before leaving was now lying on the grass without a sound, its blood staining the green space red. His horse was actually killed. Anger arose in Shen Shuchou's heart, and he didn't even have to think that it must have been the group of people who just did it. Why was he so unlucky? When he went out to fetch water, the horse died. Wherever the young master is going, you might as well take my carriage. The little lady's carriage is parked not far away. At this time, Wen Yuning came from behind supporting her sister Wen Qingning. Wen Yuning originally wanted to thank Shen Shuchou, but the other party seemed to have no intention of talking to her. This made Wen Yuning feel embarrassed to continue looking for someone, and at the same time she felt a little uncomfortable. I'm not a very ugly person. Normally, men in the capital would like to strip me naked and eat me when they look at me. As a result, this person didn't even look at himself, as if he could suck people's energy. Sometimes a woman's thoughts are so weird. If you keep staring at her, she may think you have evil intentions. If you don't look at her, she may think you are pretending. Wen Yuning felt a little happy when she saw that the other party's horse was dead, so she had a chance to talk to him. Shen Shuchou looked at himself and then at Xiao Qianzhou beside him and said, "I'm going to the capital, so I'm going to trouble you, girl." It was only 2 days' journey from the capital. Shen Shuchou could go alone, but he also took Zhang Qianzhou with him and it was difficult to find an inn along the way. Shen Shuchou didn't want the little girl to suffer anymore. "This little girl should thank you more for saving me." Hearing that Shen Shuchou was going to the capital, Wen Yuning's heart couldn't help but speed up, and her pretty face turned crimson without knowing what to think about. Shen Shuchou smiled helplessly and didn't reply. Zhang Qianzhou couldn't help but frown as he looked at the two delicate women. For some reason, she didn't like these two. On the way, Shen Shuchou drove a carriage, and the two sisters of the Wen family sat in the carriage. However, the little girl Zhang Qianzhou accompanied Shen Shuchou in the front to enjoy the breeze. Shen Shuchou didn't think much about it. He simply thought that Zhang Qianzhou was afraid of life. Compared with the Wen family's soft and finely decorated carriage, Shen Shuchou's is a rough house. At this moment, the voices of the two sisters kept coming from the carriage, most of which were spoken by Wen Yuning alone. "It's not worth it, sister, to be angry at that kind of scumbag. I've told you that Lin Yuan is not a good person, but you still don't believe me," Wen Yuning said comfortingly. In the past, when Lin Yuan often came to Wen's house to look for her sister, Wen Yuning noticed that Lin Yuan's eyes were always looking at her intentionally or unintentionally, and often create an environment where the two of them are alone, once or twice is fine. As time passed, Wen Yuning realized that Lin Yuan had some thoughts about her. She told her sister at that time, but Wen Qingning was so immersed in the gentleness that she couldn't listen at all. But he didn't expect that Lin Yuan, a scumbag, would be so vicious and do such a thing. "I must have a good talk with my father when I get back and let the Lin family suffer a little. I misjudged the person," Wen Qingning said with a sad smile on her tear-stained face. "Sister, it's okay. There are too many good men in the world to worry about. I'll find one for you when I return to Kyoto." When Wen Yuning said this again, her eyes unconsciously glanced at Shen Shuchou who was driving ahead. As an elder sister, how could Wen Qingning not notice this little girl's little moves? Since she was a child, she has liked to read some novels about Zhonghu, and she often fantasizes that someone can fall from the sky to save her in despair. Now that all the factors have been met, and the young man in white is handsome, Wen Yuning, who has never been in love, is obviously attracted to her at this moment. "When I come to Beijing, I have to thank this young master." Wen Qingning stretched out her jade hand and pushed Wen Yuning gently. Wen Yuning instantly knew what her sister meant, and her face turned red with embarrassment. "Go ahead, let me rest for a while," Wen Qingning said softly. After experiencing the betrayal of her beloved again, Wen Qingning's whole person became gloomy, and now she just wanted to be quiet for a while. Wen Yuning also knew that her sister must be very sad, so she walked out of the carriage as she wished. Secretly looking at Shen Shuchou's side face, the temples beside his ears swayed gently in the wind. The shame on Wen Yuning's face became even brighter, like a ripe pink peach, and she couldn't help but want to take a bite. My little girl still doesn't know where the young master is from or what his last name is. Wen Yuning, who used to be carefree in the past, now became coquettish. Zhang Qianqiu, who was originally bored, swung his feet and blew in the wind, then turned around when he heard the movement behind him. I'm just a wanderer, Shen Shuchou. Shen Shuchou said calmly without turning his head. The little girl heard that Yu Ning, the person inside, is my sister. Today, my two sisters are all thanks to the young master's rescue. Wen Yuning was secretly happy after knowing her name. Shen Shuchou glanced ahead and said calmly, I just happened to be passing by, no need to thank you. These words are wrong. In the eyes of the young master, this is done casually, but in the eyes of my sisters, this is a hand in hand between life and death. When I get to the capital, please allow the little girl to perform the courtesy of a landlord. Don't refuse, the young master. Hearing the words, Ning said leisurely. Shen Shuchou didn't speak, but he felt a little heavy. He was getting closer to Kyoto, and he didn't want to have any more troubles. Wen Yuning whispered, Little girl, I still don't know why the young master came to Kyoto. I've been wandering for a long time, let's find a place to settle down. Shen Shuchou returned with a partner but no one. Hearing this, Wen Yuning's beautiful face revealed unconcealable joy. Shen Shuchou settled in Kyoto, which meant that she had more opportunities. If the young master doesn't mind it, and I heard that there is a free house in the house, and the young master can live there, I will treat it as a little girl thanking the young master for his rescue. Wen Yuning said with a hint of joy in her tone. Shen Shuchou naturally heard the excitement in Wen Yuning's words and wondered why you were so excited. Afraid of Shen Shuchou's rejection, Wen Yuning immediately said decisively, that's what the young master has decided. When we get to Kyoto, the little girl will lead the young master in person. Shen Shuchou's words were blocked as soon as he reached his mouth, so he simply stopped talking and waited until Kyoto could find an excuse to escape. Zhang Qianqiu stared at Wen Yuning unkindly with her big eyes. She hated this woman more and more. That's my husband, why do you keep talking to him? It's really annoying. You are not allowed to talk to my husband. Zhang Qianqiu was heartbroken. Holding Xiao Juju, Wen Yuning also seemed to find that the little girl next to her had been staring at her. I wonder if it was her imagination, but Wen Yuning felt that this little girl seemed to dislike her. At the same time, I was also guessing that this little girl didn't look very big, so she probably couldn't be the young master's daughter. But if she is the young master's daughter, what about her mother? Maybe he passed away. For a moment, Wen Yuning thought wildly in her mind. If this was really the case, it would be too pitiful. Wen Yuning looked at Zhang Qianqiu and suddenly felt a trace of pity. Zhang Qianqiu's unkind face was a little confused. What do you mean by looking at me like this? Sir, I wonder where this little girl's mother is now. In order to verify whether it was what she thought, Wen Yuning asked nervously. When Shen Shuchou heard this, he knew what she was thinking and said helplessly, her name is Zhang Qianqiu and she is my student. Ah, Wen Yuning covered her mouth, her face flushed. She suddenly felt a little ashamed. She thought about it for a long time. It turned out that it was a husband-student relationship, so that was okay. Zhang Qianqiu also understood that this woman regarded herself as her husband's daughter. Zhang Qianqiu hated this woman even more in her heart. She didn't want to be her husband's daughter. Zhang Qianqiu also began to have random thoughts in her little mind about wanting to be his husband's wife. The short time on the carriage always flies by. In a blink of an eye, they arrived at the gate of the imperial capital. After Wen Yuning showed her pass, she entered the inner city under the respectful eyes of the soldiers. As soon as he entered the inner city, Zhang Qianqiu was stunned by the prosperity here. I saw all kinds of hawking sounds on the wide streets, and red lanterns hanging almost under the eaves. There were all kinds of gadgets in front of the vendors, and Zhang Qianqiu couldn't take his eyes away from them. There were also some pastries and candies that Zhang Qianqiu had never seen before. Colorful silks, bright porcelain, and beautiful calligraphy and paintings abound. Almost all the pedestrians on the street are wearing gorgeous brocade robes. Zhang Qianqiu has lived in Blackstone Town since he was a child. He never thought that he would see such a prosperous scene one day. From now on, this place will be her and her husband's home. She will eat a lot of new food and wear nice clothes. Of course, under the premise of all this, a husband must always be by your side. Under Wen Yuning's command, the carriage stopped in front of a magnificent mansion not long after. Miss Wen is back. The gate of the mansion opened, and many servants and maids poured out, instantly surrounding the carriage. No one paid special attention to Shen Shuchou's strange figure. However, this was exactly what Shen Shuchou wanted, so he immediately put the package on his back and held Xiao Zhang Qianqiu in his hand, and left the place quietly. In the carriage, Wen Yuning handed her sister Wen Qingning to the maid to help her back home, and then eagerly looked for Shen Shuchou. But when everyone had dispersed, the figure in white was not seen. Wen Yuning stamped her feet, and anxiously grabbed the servant beside her and asked, "Where are the two people driving the car, one large and one small?" The servant who was pulled was a little confused. He quickly recalled what he had just seen and said, "I think I saw the coachman walking towards the east side of the street." There was a hint of disappointment in Wen Yuning's eyes, and he left without even saying hello. "Is this lady so scary? It makes you want to throw it away." Snort. "But Kyoto is my territory, and it's useless for you to run anywhere here. Even if you don't like it, I don't like to owe others. The worst thing is that we don't owe each other anything afterwards. Send someone to look for it quickly and pay more attention to the nearby real estate developers to see if anyone wants to buy a house." Thinking of this, Wen Yuning continued to give orders. Although the servant didn't understand why the young lady cared so much about a coachman, he still obeyed the order. Here, Shen Shuchou led Zhang Qianqiu through the bustling streets. The little girl could hardly move along the way. "Sometimes I look in front of this stall, and sometimes I look in front of that stall." After a while, Shen Shuchou had a lot of gadgets in his hands. These were all bought for Xiao Zhang Qianqiu, who held candies in his two little hands and had a bulging mouth. "Sir, where are we going?" Zhang Qianqiu said vaguely. Shen Shuchou smiled and tapped her little head with his hand. "Of course you are going to see our home. Is it possible that you still want to sleep on the street at night?" Zhang Qianqiu's eyes suddenly lit up and said, "Sir, Qianqiu will choose." Zhang Qianqiu said excitedly, "Sir, what do you think of this courtyard? There are locust trees in the courtyard, which can be cool in summer and warm in winter. You can also plant some flowers and plants around it that are pleasing to the eye. More importantly, the geographical location here is very good, and it is easy to go out. In the distance is the Tianan River in Kyoto, where there are lantern poetry gatherings every night. And the furniture here is all available, and it's all made of high-quality wood. You don't need to worry about it anymore." A fat middle-aged man led Shen Shuchou in the courtyard and talked endlessly. Shen Shuchou did not reply immediately, but asked Zhang Qianqiu on the other side, "Do you like it?" Zhang Qianqiu squeezed her little hands and whispered, "Is it expensive?" The obese middle-aged man immediately said, "It's not expensive, it's only 800 taels. This is the only one left in this courtyard. If you like it, hurry up and get it." Zhang Qianqiu opened her mouth slightly. The price shocked her. Since becoming literate, Zhang Qianqiu has also understood what a big price 800 taels is. She had never seen so much money in her entire life. Although her husband provided all the money, Zhang Qianqiu didn't know how much he still had. "Sir, I don't like this. Let's change it." Zhang Qianqiu grabbed the corner of Shen Shuchou's clothes and said, 800 taels is still too expensive for Zhang Qianqiu. As long as he has a family with his husband, Zhang Qianqiu doesn't care even if it is a small family. Shen Shuchou looked at Zhang Qianqiu's appearance, and he didn't know that he liked it in his heart, but he was scared off by the price. "This is it, no need to change." Shen Shuchou casually threw a heavy package to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's face was ecstatic. He didn't expect that this young man who seemed to be wearing ordinary clothes would be so generous. As expected, those who can come to Kyoto to buy a house are all crouching tigers, hidden dragons. "Okay, I won't disturb your rest now. If you need anything, you can come to Shangyan Tower to find me." The fat middle-aged man squeezed his small eyes together and said with a grin. Sir, no need. After the middle-aged man left, Zhang Qianqiu said as if he had just woken up from a dream. Shen Shuqiu just made a casual move, and Zhang Qianqiu was stunned for a moment. After coming back to his senses, he quickly explained that he wanted Shen Shuqiu to go back. Shen Shuqiu smiled and touched his head and said, It's okay, sir, you still have a lot of money. Besides, this is what Qianqiu likes. This. After all, it's our home, isn't it? It's okay to be good to your family. Quote. After all, Shen Shuqiu's money was given by the system and he couldn't spend it all, so why not do better to himself? Moreover, Shen Shuqiu also experienced what it was like for a rich person to buy a house casually and without considering the price. Zhang Qianqiu's eyes turned slightly red and he said, Sir, when I grow up, I will make enough money to support you. Okay, Shen Shuqiu responded with a smile. I will make a lot of money in the future, and I will give it all to my husband. Come on, Zhang Qianqiu, you can do it. Zhang Qianqiu encouraged himself in his heart, and then followed Shen Shuqiu to choose a house of his own. Zhang Qianqiu chose the room next door to Shen Shuqiu. The entire hospital room was very clean, and people came to clean it every day, but Zhang Qianqiu still insisted on wiping it carefully. The entire courtyard was cleaned and arranged, and the sky became dark without realizing it. Boom, boom, boom. At this time, there was a knock on the door suddenly. Shen Shuqiu raised his head in confusion. Who is outside the door? He has just arrived in Kyoto and doesn't know anyone else. With a puzzled expression, Shen Shuqiu got up and opened the door. Standing outside the door was a fat middle-aged man, the man who sold his house today. Next to the middle-aged man stood a slim girl with beautiful eyes. It was none other than Wen Yuning, who had come to Beijing all the way. Hello. Wen Yuning's eyes lit up and she raised her hand to say hello. Why are you here? Shen Shuqiu said calmly. You bought a house, and it happened to be the place I wanted to give to you. Why do you think I'm here? Wen Yuning said with a full smile. At this moment, Wen Yuning felt more and more that this was the fate between the two of them. This house had been listed for sale in Shangyan Building, but the price was too high and it never sold. Unexpectedly, someone came to tell her today that the house was sold. Wen Yuning immediately planned to have someone take it back because she was leaving it for Shen Shuqiu. After doing some research, she was pleasantly surprised to find that the person she wanted to buy the house was Shen Shuqiu. After hearing the reason, Shen Shuqiu was a little shocked. How could this be such a coincidence? In his heart, he didn't want to have anything to do with the second young lady of the Wen family. But now Zhang Qianqiu likes this house and can't retreat. If you buy it, just buy it. The worst thing you can do is have less contact with her in the future. Young master, if you had told me earlier, I wouldn't have dared to accept your money. I will repay the 800 taels here in full. The fat middle-aged man handed the package in his hand to Shen Shuqiu. Shen Shuqiu shook his head and refused. Since I paid for the house, it is mine. If there is no business, it will be returned. If you insist on doing this, Shen will have to find another place. This. The middle-aged man looked at Wen Yuning at a loss. Wen Yuning said indifferently, just keep it. When you need the money later, you can take it back at any time. Only middle-aged people are allowed to leave. After the middle-aged man left, Shen Shuqiu said, it's getting late, Miss Wen should go back early. After saying that, he was about to close the door when Wen Yuning suddenly slipped in through the gap. Master Shen, is this why you don't welcome little girls? Wen Yuning approached Shen Shuqiu. The girl's body fragrance is like the fragrance of magnolia flowers in spring, coming straight to her. Wen Yuning's heart was beating wildly, and her dimples turned pink. This was the first time that she had been so bold to get close to a man. What are you doing? Suddenly an angry scolding came from behind. Zhang Qianqiu ran over quickly like an angry little tiger and stretched out his hands to protect Shen Shuqiu. She was just resting in the room, and this woman was going to eat her husband. If the husband wants to eat, he must eat it himself, and no one else can. Zhang Qianqiu's disgust grew stronger and stronger. When Wen Yuning was looked at by Zhang Qianqiu like this, she suddenly felt a chill running down her spine, and some fear suddenly came over her heart. The blush on Wen Yuning's face disappeared instantly, and she felt that it was just her misunderstanding that she was frightened by a little girl. Miss Wen has other matters. Shen Shucho pulled Zhang Qianqiu behind him and said. Wen Yuning then said, my father wants to invite the young master to have a gathering at his house. The young master must not refuse. Shen Shucho thought for a moment and then agreed. Shen will go to the banquet. If you don't agree today, maybe they will keep coming later, so I'll just go to the banquet and end it tonight. The little girl will wait for you outside the door. Hearing this, Ning Yu smiled happily. After hearing that Yuning left, Zhang Qianqiu said aggressively, Sir, this woman has evil intentions. She wants to eat you. Shen Shucho smiled when he heard this. What's the matter? Where did you read the book? Zhang Qianqiu pouted. No. If sir, I can only eat it. Zhang Qianqiu added in a low voice. As Wen Yuning's carriage arrived at the Wen mansion, Shen Shucho realized that the pair of sisters he had rescued were actually the beloved daughters of the Prime Minister of Kyoto. The entire banquet lasted only an hour. After it was over, Shen Shucho sat down casually, stood up and left. The Wen family's mansion is very large, almost as big as Shen Shucho's 5 other courtyards. After Wen Yuning said goodbye, she walked towards the door. Master, are you still talking tonight? Wen Yuning seemed to be wearing a veil under the moonlight, with bright eyes and white teeth. Shen Shucho responded casually, very good. Where's Zhang Qianqiu? Wen Yuning smiled and looked at Zhang Qianqiu who was standing aside. Zhang Qianqiu ignored her for the first time. Wen Yuning didn't look angry and kept smiling. The three of them walked side by side under the moonlight, with silver gauze on their shoulders and a clear pond next to them. From it, you can see the reflection of the three people in the bright white moon. Wen Yuning felt a little sweet in her heart, and she just felt that it would be great if she could keep going like this, even if there was no end. Unfortunately, the road was a bit short, and within a few moments a few people arrived in front of the front hall. Qing Ning, listen to my explanation, things are not what you think. Go away, I don't want to see you. At this time, there was a sudden noise outside the house. Upon hearing this voice, Wen Yuning's face was full of evil spirits and she quickly walked out of the door. When Shen Shucho saw this, he led Zhang Qianqiu and followed quickly. At this moment, there was a man and a woman standing outside the door. The woman was Wen Qingning, and the man was dressed in black and looked very elegant. Lin Yuan, you still have the nerve. If you do something like that, my aunt hasn't come to trouble you yet, so you might as well come to her door. Wen Yuning's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. Lin Yuan looked away from Wen Qingning and glanced at Shen Shucho and the others. When he saw Wen Yuning and Zhang Qianqiu, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Lin Yuan said, Yu Ning, you came just in time. Please persuade your sister that I really didn't do that thing. You have to believe me. Snapped. Wen Yuning raised her jade hand angrily and slapped her in the past. Stop pretending to be an affectionate and good person here. My aunt tells you that if Lin Yuan disappears from my sister's eyes from now on, if I hadn't considered Uncle Lin and you the only one, I would have killed him. You, get out of here now. Lin Yuan covered his face, the anger in his eyes flashed away, and then he put on a pitiful look and said, Yu Ning, don't you even believe me? Wen Yuning said in disgust, don't tell me Yu Ning to get out of here, just hug your third prince's legs. Lin Yuan's expression suddenly changed. Why? My sister didn't tell you. Don't think I don't know. You are such a shameless beast, haha, you can actually do something like that. Get out now or I will really kill you. Wen Yuning sneered with cold murderous intent. Lin Yuan could feel that Wen Yuning really dared to kill him here. Immediately, his face became stiff and livid, and he glanced at several people with dark eyes, especially Zhang Qianqiu, who stayed for a few breaths before leaving. Looking at Lin Yuan's leaving figure, Shen Shucho's eyes darkened, and he had a bad feeling in his heart, as if changes were coming soon. Leaving Wenfu, Lin Yuan shuttled through the night and soon came to a place called Baixiang downstairs. He walked calmly downstairs to a room on the 3rd floor and knocked nervously on the door. Enter. After a moment, a gloomy male voice sounded inside. Lin Yuan gently pushed the door open and closed it, then carefully knelt down. The middle of the room was blocked by a gauze, which was swept away from the peripheral vision. There was a man sitting inside, and there were 2 young girls serving him beside him. Lin Yuan didn't dare to bother and touched his head on the floor, waiting for the order from the man inside. All kinds of unpleasant sounds sounded from behind the gauze. Lin Yuan only felt that the blood in his body was tingling, and his whole body was shaking slightly while he was kneeling on the ground. I don't know how much time passed, but the sound behind the gauze gradually disappeared. Tell me, what's the matter? The man's voice came from inside. Prince, the Wen family already knows that this matter is about you. Lin Yuan's throat rolled and he spoke nervously. Ha, so, you want to tell me that not only did your matter not get done, but you also want to let the Wen family know who instigated you. Zhao Hongyi's scoffing voice fell in Lin Yuan's ears, like a huge mountain pressing down on him and making him unable to breathe. Lin Yuan's face was full of panic and he said, Prince, please don't worry, I will take charge of this matter alone and will never implicate the prince. After saying this, Lin Yuan was frightened. He shook his body, as if waiting for the man inside to judge him. Will I be implicated? That's not the case, but at most I will be criticized by that old man, it doesn't matter. When this prince's magic power is perfected in 2 years, I will ascend to the throne and kill my brothers and sisters first, and then find out about the Wen family. Zhao Hongye sneered. Then he said cruelly, if you fail, there will be punishment. Don't you think so? It just happens that you are used to experiment with this prince's blood spirit power. Lin Yuan's eyes shrank, and before he could say anything, severe pain came from his body. Ah! Lin Yuan screamed, and his entire eyeball became bulging due to congestion. The next moment, Lin Yuan looked at the changed body with fear. I saw that the arm, which was originally very strong, suddenly shrank a circle, not only the arm but also the whole body. It was as if the flesh and blood disappeared in the body out of thin air, and a large amount of blood disappeared. The whole person lay on the ground in pain, his whole body pale. After a moment, Lin Yuan changed from his rosy face to a skinny and scary look. What kind of evil skill is this, so weird and terrifying? Lin Yuan was terrified. As early as a year ago, the third prince Zhao Hongye came to him to do things for him secretly, specifically to find some virgins, or some women. At first, Lin Yuan simply thought that Zhao Hongye was just for his lust. But later he found something wrong. The women he found for Zhao Hongye were only sent over, and they would never be seen again in a few days. And later, Zhao Hongye's needs became greater and greater. Sometimes he needed 6 or 7 women to satisfy him in one night. This question has been buried in his heart, but he has never asked about it. It was not until a month ago that Zhao Hongye confided some things to him and promised him great benefits. At that time, Lin Yuan finally knew that this seemingly dandy prince was so ambitious. The women he wanted were not only for satisfying lust but also for practicing an evil skill. Lin Yuan had seen a living person turn into a skeleton out of thin air more than once. At this time, Lin Yuan had no way out. After seeing this secret, he was tied to this boat. Otherwise, a prince would kill the entire Lin family easily. If Zhao Hongye really became the emperor, the status of his Lin family would rise. In the days to come, Lin Yuan worked harder to find some women for Zhao Hongye. As time went by, ordinary women could not satisfy him no matter how many there were. It was just that he heard from Zhao Hongye that some spirits were better for his cultivation. Later, Lin Yuan really caught a 7-year-old girl spirit and gave it to Zhao Hongye. Slowly tasting the sweetness, Lin Yuan became more and more uncontrollable, so when he heard that he wanted the second daughter of the Wen family, even if Wen Qingning was his fiancée, he only hesitated and nodded in agreement. He was in urgent need of a better performance, so he personally found someone to surround the 2 girls of the Wen family, but he never expected that the result would fail. And from the strange man he saw at the Wen family today, Lin Yuan almost guessed without hesitation that this person was the one who ruined his plan. Then Lin Yuan told Zhao Hongye about Shen Shuqiu who he saw at the Wen family today, and Zhang Qianqiu beside him. No hurry, let her grow for another 2 years, the old dog has warned me these days. Zhao Hongye smiled obscenely, and then there was another ups and downs. Lin Yuan dragged his tired body away tactfully. Tianwu Junshi 38 years. The 9th day of February. A piece of pure white snow adds a touch of cold color to Kyoto. It's been a cold day for several days, the land is covered with ice and snow, and the air seems to be freezing. This year, Zhang Qianqiu is 10 years old, and it has been 6 years since Shen Shuqiu came to this world. This scene seemed familiar, as if I was back in the thatched house in Blackstone Town that could be crushed by heavy snow at any time. Shen Shuqiu sat casually on the steps of the other courtyard, not knowing what he was thinking. An uneasy feeling filled his body, and Shen Shuqiu knew that something bad was coming. The last time I felt this way was 2 years ago, and if that was just a wake-up call, this time it was really coming. Hey, what are you thinking about? You are so serious, you don't even know I'm here. Suddenly, a clear female voice came from beside me. Shen Shuqiu came to his senses and knew that Wen Yuning was here without even thinking about it. In the past 2 years, Wen Yuning often came to see him. Wen Yuning even expressed her feelings to him, but Shen Shuqiu refused without thinking. He is a person who is about to die and is not from this world, so why should he bother others? Although he had refused many times and had shown himself to be 1,000 miles away from others, Wen Yuning always rushed forward without hesitation. Shen Shuqiu felt complicated about Wen Yuning, which made him not know how to face it. What are you doing here? Shen Shuqiu's voice was always lukewarm. I'm giving you and Qianqiu clothes. I knitted them myself, just like the one I'm wearing. Wen Yuning didn't care and said with a smile. Only then did Shen Shuqiu turn around and look at Wen Yuning. She was wearing a snow-white fox fur. She held her chin in her hands and looked at Shen Shuqiu with a smile. There were 2 folded clothes in her arms. Wen Yuning put the clothes in Shen Shuqiu's hands, then stood up and turned 365 degrees on the snow without blind spots. The light figure is like a snow lotus blooming in the snow, bright and white. Wen Yuning's eyes curled into crescent moons and she said with a smile, "How is it? Does it look good? So you've been tinkering with this at home these past few days?" Shen Shuqiu said. Wen Yuning stood beside her and said, "That's right. I've been making clothes for someone at home, but it's a pity that that heartless person didn't even come to see me." Shen Shuqiu fell silent. No wonder, Shen Shuqiu was wondering why Wen Yuning never showed up these days. He thought it was because she was relieved, but it turned out that she wanted to make clothes for him and Qianqiu with her own hands. "Yu Ning, have you ever considered changing to someone else?" Shen Shuqiu murmured with his throat rolling. "So Shen Shuqiu, do you have to tell me this every time I come to see you? Everything I do is of my own free will, and I don't need you to guide me if I like it." Wen Yuning's voice suddenly rose in pitch. Shen Shuqiu smiled bitterly. Every time he mentioned this, Wen Yuning got angry with him. "Yu Ning, I really don't like you, so please stop disturbing my life, okay?" Shen Shuqiu looked at Wen Yuning seriously and forced his tone to become cold. The second stage of changes was coming, and Shen Shuqiu didn't want to involve other people's emotions at this juncture. Looking at Shen Shuqiu's cold eyes, Wen Yuning's body trembled slightly, a sharp pain arose in her heart, and the corners of her eyes became a little warm. Wen Yuning stared with tears in her eyes. "Do you really hate me so much? Do you really not care about me at all?" Shen Shuqiu didn't look at her or speak, his expression as cold as frost. Wen Yuning knew that this was his answer, and rushed out the door while holding back her tears. Shen Shuqiu clearly saw the tears falling down Wen Yuning's face from the corner of his eye. But he had to do this to completely end Wen Yuning's concern. Wen Yuning, who rushed out of the gate of the other courtyard, could no longer hold back. Her whole body was drained of strength and she leaned against the wall with tears streaming down her face. Wen Yuning's heart seemed to be pierced by a sharp blade, and the severe pain almost made her faint. "Are you okay?" a voice sounded. Wen Yuning raised her pretty face full of tears, and a pretty little girl appeared in front of her. The person in front of him was Zhang Qianqiu. Looking at this face, Wen Yuning thought of everything that had happened in the past 2 years. From the beginning, Zhang Qianqiu exuded malice towards her and tried to prevent her from getting close to Shen Shuqiu. Slowly, Wen Yuning began to hate this little girl more and more. But later she learned about the little girl's life experience from Shen Shuqiu, and Wen Yuning put down those emotions, even though Zhang Qianqiu still blocked her as always. Wen Yuning had a ridiculous thought in her heart. Zhang Qianqiu seemed to have that kind of thought towards his husband. With the gradual contact, Wen Yuning became more certain of this idea. This may be the intuition among women. Later, a strange feeling developed, as if Wen Yuning was competing for a man with a girl of several years old. But now, she didn't need to worry. Wen Yunning felt very painful and tired. Maybe I've always been pretentious. Wen Yunning laughed to herself. It's okay. Then she held on to the wall and slowly walked away, leaving this other courtyard that made her sad. Zhang Qianqiu stopped where he was and looked at Wen Yuning's leaving figure without looking back for a long time. In the past, Zhang Qianqiu might have said something sarcastic. She didn't want her husband to be taken away by others. Now Zhang Qianqiu couldn't say such words, and Wen Yuning's back gradually disappeared from sight. Zhang Qianqiu opened the door and saw Shen Shuqiu sitting on the steps at first sight, wondering what he was thinking. When he got closer, he found that there were folded clothes in Shen Shuqiu's arms. When he thought about Wen Yunning, he guessed that it was from her, but he didn't know what happened here just now. Why did Wen Yunning, who had always been playful, cry and leave? Sir, Zhang Qianqiu shouted. Shen Shuqiu came back to his senses and said, Qianqiu is back. Looking at Shen Shuqiu's absent-minded look, Zhang Qianqiu pursed her lips and said nothing. She felt that her husband must be in a bad mood now. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. In the past 3 months, Wen Yunning never came to see Shen Shuqiu again. Shen Shuqiu didn't hear any news about Wen Yunning, but Wen Qingning came once during this period. She just asked him what happened between them. When Wen Yunning returned to the house, she locked herself in the sun for a whole day, hoping that Shen Shuqiu could visit. Shen Shuqiu only hesitated slightly before refusing. Finally, Wen Qingning left after seeing no results, with a hint of disappointment in her eyes. After that, the days became dull, but Shen Shuqiu's mood became more and more restless day by day. June is the height of summer. On the 7th, a piece of news quickly swept the entire Kyoto. The third prince Zhao Hongye teamed up with the monks to seduce the black armored army and launched a long-planned massacre in the Jinluan Hall of the imperial court. A total of 130 ministers died tragically, including the first grade, second grade, prime minister, Teifu and Taibao all died in the Jinluan Hall. Even the remaining 7 princes and 6 princesses were not spared. When the emperor, Zhao Ji, had his head cut off and hung in the main hall. And the remaining officials with small positions didn't even have a chance to resist. In an instant, there were countless casualties and corpses, and blood soaked in the magnificent hall. In addition, the residences of several important officials were ransacked by the black armored army. A series of mansions including Prime Minister Wen's mansion, Taibao Li's mansion, Shengshu, etc. were all encircled and suppressed by black armored soldiers. For a time, the entire Kyoto was filled with blood and fighting, with corpses, burning, killing and looting everywhere. When he heard the news again, Shen Shuqiu knew that changes had begun. The sun was blazing in the hot summer of June. But the huge Wen mansion was a different scene. A large number of corpses fell in the courtyard, and the blood-red liquid dyed the clear pond red. Broken limbs and arms were everywhere, scattered all over the Wen mansion, like a purgatory on earth. From the 50-year-old old man to women and children, all fell under the blood knife without exception. The air was filled with a pungent smell of blood, exuding a creepy chill. There were faint bursts of miserable sounds coming from the backyard not far away. Don't let any of them go. Kill all except the 2 young ladies of the Wen family. Lin Yuan led a team of black armored soldiers to launch an inhumane massacre in the Wen mansion. These ordinary people were like toys in front of the black armored soldiers. They were easily crushed to death without any resistance. Now that Zhao Hongye overthrew the previous emperor and successfully ascended the throne, Lin Yuan's status has risen. Now he has volunteered to lead a team of black armored soldiers to personally massacre the Wen mansion. The corpses all over the ground and the pungent smell of blood made Lin Yuan feel extremely enjoyable and deeply fascinated by it. This is the authority of the superior, and it is also the judge in charge of life and death. Lin Yuan grabbed a steward of the Wen mansion, Wang Bo, and said coldly, "Tell me where your eldest lady is. I will spare your life if you tell me." Butler Wang Bo trembled all over and his eyes were filled with fear, but he gritted his teeth and refused to tell the location of the young lady of the Wen family. Lin Yuan showed a cruel smile and stepped on the steward Wang Bo. Then he inserted the blade with a cold light into the thigh and slashed it hard. Tear. A thigh was cut off abruptly, and the bloody scene was chilling. Ah! Butler Wang Bo let out a miserable roar, and severe pain swept through his body. If you don't say it, it's the next leg. I want to see whether you are hard-mouthed or hard-fleshed. Lin Yuan said condescendingly. Kill me. I will never tell the whereabouts of the young lady. The fear in the eyes of Butler Wang Bo turned into anger. Lin Yuan said, I really don't know what's so good about your young lady that can compare with your life. My life was given by the young lady, how can a beast like you know it? Fortunately, the young lady didn't get together with a beast like you. Bah, come on and kill me. Butler Wang Bo cursed. Lin Yuan lost all face after being scolded, his face was cold, and he immediately inserted another knife into his thigh. Just when he was about to use force. Stop. A delicate shout came. Lin Yuan looked up and immediately showed a sinister smile. Wen Qingning and her sister rushed over with a group of guards. Wen Qingning's beautiful eyes were filled with murderous intent, and her body trembled as she watched this cruel scene. Miss, please leave quickly, don't worry about me. The housekeeper Wang Bo shouted at her. The old man is so talkative. Seeing this, Lin Yuan casually cut his neck with a knife. Wang Bo. Wen Yuning's delicate body trembled, and she pointed at Lin Yuan. Qingning, Yuning, the two beauties finally came out, but it's a pity that your Wen family is almost dead. Ha ha ha, if you had climbed into the master's bed obediently, maybe the Wen family wouldn't be like this, but it's a pity that even your dead dog father died in the Golden Palace. Lin Yuan smiled sinisterly. I'm going to kill you. Wen Yuning's sword-holding hand was shaking constantly, and her face was full of hatred as she was about to rush forward. But she was stopped by the guards behind her. Miss, don't be impulsive. Ha ha ha, Yuning, don't be impatient. If you want to kill me, wait until you are played by the Emperor. By then, you may fall into my hands after being played with by me. At that time, I will definitely let you experience what is the ultimate happiness in the world. Looking at Wen Yuning's appearance, Lin Yuan laughed even more wildly. Beast, you are really a beast. My Wen family treated you well in the past, but you can do such a thing that is outrageous to both humans and gods. I should have killed you in the past. Wen Qingning's chest trembled violently and his face was angry. Hearing this, Lin Yuan's eyes became more vicious. Ha ha, you are good to me. You are just greedy for the wealth of my Lin family. You and I have made an engagement, but you are reluctant to get married. You have been fooling me with the date. But it doesn't matter. When I get tired of playing with you, you will come to me. As early as 10 years ago, the Lin family just arrived in Kyoto. At that time, they were just hawkers. It was the Wen family who gave them resources to slowly develop and squeeze into the top wealthy business families. If there was no support and resources provided by the Wen family, the Lin family would have been swallowed up by others long ago. Although it was a childhood marriage, but they first met when they were only 10 years old, and they didn't really get engaged until they were 15. After slowly getting to know each other, Wen Qingning fell in love. But she never thought that behind this seemingly beautiful side was a huge danger. Wen Qingning is now very late, and she should have killed this beast 2 years ago. The change in the Wen family was very sudden, and it caught people off guard. She received the news of her father's death while she was at home. Before the truth was verified, the Wen family was slaughtered by the black armored army that broke in. The two sisters were taken to the back hall by the guards and hid. They had no time to be sad, and now they had to stand up. Their biological mother had passed away a few years ago, and all the uncles in the family were dead. Now only the two of them have the most say. Hearing Lin Yuan's beastly words, Wen Qingning couldn't stop retreating, and the huge anger burning in her heart made her speechless. The eyes of hatred stared at that face, wishing to eat its flesh and bones. Kill all the guards. Lin Yuan lost his patience and immediately ordered the black-armored soldiers who were waiting in full battle array. The dark armor and cold long swords brought a shocking sense of oppression. Miss, hurry up, we will stop them. The guards surrounding Wen Qingning and her sister raised their long swords. Brothers, kill. Instantly, these thin guards fought with the black-armored soldiers. This was just a one-sided battle. These guards were killed by the sharp weapons in the hands of many black-armored soldiers, and they couldn't even penetrate the thick armor. In an instant, the battlefield ended, and the black-armored soldiers surrounded Wen Qingning and Wen Yuning. Looking at the guards around them dying on the ground, the two of them had tears in their eyes, and hatred hung on their faces and almost twisted. I'm going to kill you, you beast. Wen Yunning was trembling and about to kill him, but was caught by the black-armored soldiers. Lin Yuan walked slowly towards him with a sinister smile on his face. He stretched out a hand and touched Wen Yuning's face and said, "What a tender little face, look at this graceful little figure, it's a pity that you will soon become a plaything under your crotch. Bah, even if I become a devil, I will never let you go." Wen Yunning spit on her face and said resentfully. Lin Yuan's face instantly became ferocious, and he grabbed her hair with one hand and said, "You dare to spit on me? When I get tired of playing with you, I will definitely serve you well, and then sell you to a brothel, so that everyone can play with the usually high-handed second lady of the Wen family for free." Looking at this face so close, Wen Yunning was helpless, and hatred filled her heart. Almost all the people in the Wen mansion were dead, what could she do now? Who can come to save her? Wen Yunning suddenly thought of the white figure she had been thinking about every day. The man who took her heart 2 years ago, the man who made her sad. Unlike the past, Wen Yunning wanted to see the other person's heart. Now she only hoped that the other person had left Kyoto and was not implicated. "If there is really a next life, my heart is still yours. I hope you can take a good look at me at that time." Wen Yunning stepped into despair, staring at Lin Yuan with hateful eyes, and then looked at herself and her sister again. The two seemed to have reached some kind of consensus. Lin Yuan seemed to find that something was wrong with the two women, and blood was seen flowing from the corners of their mouths. Lin Yuan felt a chill on his back. He instantly understood what this was, and immediately stretched out his hand to pinch the two women's jaws tightly. "This idiot wants to commit suicide, no way," Lin Yuan said with a grim face. If they really committed suicide, how would he go back to report? He would definitely die under that weird technique. A chill rose in the bottom of his heart, followed by a face full of anger. Snap! Lin Yuan slapped the two girls on the face, and said viciously, "With me here, you will never die. You will enjoy it later. Only then can you experience what it means to not be able to take both life and death with you." Lin Yuan immediately ordered everyone to leave, and Wen Yunning was completely in despair. The world was covered by a gray, and there was no hope, and even suicide was impossible. Whoosh! At this moment, there was a sound of breaking air in the air. Lin Yuan was like facing a great enemy, and his eyes quickly swept around, as if some ferocious beast was staring at him. The next moment, a white light appeared in his eyes, flying towards him at a very fast speed. Ah! With a click, Lin Yuan's right arm flew high, and a huge force came from his chest, and the whole person was blasted out. The surrounding black-armored soldiers could only see waves of white and sharp sword light, and it was difficult for the naked eye to capture the shadow wandering in front of them. In an instant, several black-armored soldiers fell to the ground, with blood gushing from their necks. "Follow me," a reassuring voice fell into the ears of the two girls. Hearing the words, Ning's delicate body trembled, tears could not stop flowing, and she stepped forward and hugged the white figure. Noticing the trembling coming from the soft body behind him, Shen Shucho comforted him, "It's okay, I'm here." Wen Yunning hugged her tightly from behind and choked with sobs. "Why do you need to take a trip into this muddy water?" Wen Yunning sincerely did not want Shen Shucho to appear here. This time they faced Zhao Hongye, who had proclaimed himself emperor. It could be said that it was a situation of death and no life. Shen Shucho said melancholy, "I have no way to go. Changes have already begun, and Shen Shucho, as an important part of it, can only abide by the arrangements of the system. Since they are all going to die soon, try your best to carve a bloody path for the two sisters before you die." Hearing these words, Wen Yuning's delicate body couldn't stop trembling, and she felt a strong sense of guilt in her heart. Wen Yunning thought that she was the one who brought Shen Shucho into danger, but she didn't know that Kyoto was already Shen Shucho's graveyard. "You follow me, I can only try my best to lead you out," Shen Shucho said lightly. He knew that there must be immortal cultivators in Kyoto, so he could only try his best to get out of Wen Mansion before the immortal cultivators arrived. "Master Shen, I won't leave. You take Yu Ning away and don't come back again," Wen Qingning said softly with a tear-stained face. "The two sisters have no martial arts skills. There are so many black-armored soldiers outside. It is easier to take one away than two. If someone must die, Wen Qingning only hopes that person is herself. Sister, let's go together." Wen Yuning took Wen Qingning's hand and said. Shen Shuqiu sighed slightly and said, "Follow me, don't even say anything." The two daughters of the Wen family immediately closed their mouths with worried expressions on their faces. Shen Shuqiu took a breath and flicked the sword in his hand. Lang lang. The crisp sound of swords echoed around him, and Shen Shuqiu's aura was rising steadily at this moment. The sword's light flashed in Shen Shuqiu's eyes, and cold murderous intent surrounded the sword's edge. "Don't let them go, come to me." Lin Yuan covered his bleeding broken arm and said resentfully. Hearing this, a large number of black-armored soldiers formed a human wall and blocked the three people inside. Lin Yuan's face full of resentment twisted together and said, "Grab him, I will cut off his limbs myself." Thump thump thump. The iron boots made a dull sound like drums on the ground, and they pressed forward step by step with sharp blades. Shen Shuqiu's eyes were indifferent. He held a sword flower in his hand, and disappeared in an instant. While spinning and leaping, the sword flashed and passed through at lightning speed. At the speed of Shen Shuqiu's lightning, the black-armored army could not catch any trace. The cold murderous intent of the sword came from the 360-degree blind spots around him. In a short period of time, a sword energy storm formed that kept strangers away. Right now, Shen Shuqiu slashed out from the storm with his sword, and the cold and ruthless sword edge was like a poisonous snake opening its fangs and biting him. Click. The black-armored army in front of him was torn to pieces by the sword energy with his thick armor. After the sword ended, several more sword energies followed, cold and full of murderous intent. A sword cage enveloped many black-armored troops. As Shen Shuqiu's speed became faster and faster, the degree of crushing force of the sword energy also became stronger. This horrific scene made Lin Yuan tremble with fear. This kid's sword is so cold and so strong. The next moment, the sword energy cage shrank toward the middle, and Shen Shuqiu's eyes glowed with cold murderous intent. The long sword with ruthless murderous intention suddenly slashed out, but my momentum was like the rolling waves of the sea, and I would kill with one sword as I went forward. This sword shattered the sea of stars and struck out instantly with the force of thunder and wind that struck the sinking river. The air seemed to be torn apart, and the airflow rushed to the side. Boom! A large number of black-armored troops gathered together were destroyed by this extremely terrifying sword. When Shen Shuqiu returned to the two girls, he suddenly felt a little unsteady on his feet. When Wen Yuning saw this, she quickly held her hand and said with a worried look on her face, "Are you okay?" Shen Shuqiu shook his head slightly and said, "Take this opportunity and leave quickly." In order to prevent any cultivators from daring to come, Shen Shuqiu focused all his strength on this sword without any reservation. This consumes a lot of money on him. At this moment, his combat power is gone. He can only take advantage of this opportunity to leave before others arrive. The two daughters of the Wen family also knew that this was a good opportunity, and immediately followed Shen Shuqiu and quickly left in front of the Wen mansion. Lin Yuan, who fell to the ground, had already climbed far away due to his serious injuries. Shen Shuqiu's terrifying fighting power scared him so much that he stayed away from the battlefield for fear of dying by the sword. Now he can only watch the other party escape, but there is nothing he can do. He only led a group of 30 black-armored soldiers, and now they are all dead at the hands of this man. "Your Highness has arrived." Suddenly a sharp voice sounded outside the door. Shen Shuqiu's face suddenly darkened, his footsteps suddenly stopped, and he quietly retreated with the two girls. "Ha ha ha, run. Why don't you run away? Your Highness is here. Don't even think about leaving. You fool, I will torture you to death bit by bit later." Lin Yuan laughed wildly with a spiteful face. Shen Shuqiu's calm eyes stared at the door. The two daughters of the Wen family were even more ashen-faced, and the hopes they had just ignited were extinguished by a basin of cold water at this moment. The next moment, 4 eunuchs carried a gorgeous sedan into the Wen mansion, exposing it to the sight of several people. Behind the sedan, there was an old man wearing a black patterned robe, and countless black-armored troops behind him. After a while, the sedan stopped not far from Shen Shuqiu, and then a large number of black-armored troops came in and surrounded him again. The atmosphere in the field became serious, and there was a vague murderous intention surrounding it. Shen Shuqiu's eyes were calm and locked on the faceless old man in black robe. His intuition told him that this person was definitely a monk, and a very strong one. Lin Yuan. Immediately afterwards, Zhao Hongyi's lazy male voice came from the sedan. Lin Yuan, who was hiding aside, immediately crawled over on the ground like a dog with his remaining left hand. His Royal Highness is here. Lin Yuan touched his head to the ground and said respectfully. This is what you do. Zhao Hongye said calmly in the sedan. An invisible pressure pressed on Lin Yuan like a mountain. Lin Yuan looked extremely frightened and said quickly, Your Highness, this is not my fault. I have already caught him. It was him who came out to ruin my business and cut off my arm. Lin Yuan's face was full of fear. He pointed at Shen Shucho and shouted. Shen Shucho instantly noticed a scrutinizing gaze looking at him in the sedan. A threat arose in his heart, and Shen Shucho was slightly startled. The person in the sedan chair was also a monk, and he seemed to be an evil cultivator. But it was the old man in black robe beside him who put pressure on Shen Shucho. From the outside, he looks like an ordinary old man, and it is easy for people to ignore him when standing in the crowd. But such an old man brought pressure to Shen Shucho like an unattainable and dangerous peak. It seemed that today was the day the system arranged for him to die, and Shen Shucho felt a helpless smile in his heart. In front of such a bottomless monk, any small gesture is superfluous. It was a pity that he did not save the two daughters of the Wen family before they died, and Shen Shucho felt powerless deep in his heart. Although you have known your ending for a long time, at this time, the black despair will drown you in the abyss like stagnant water. You let me down so much that you can't even be a dog. Zhao Hongyi's voice revealed a hint of coldness. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that something was wrong and said quickly, Your Highness, I. Before Lin Yuan finished speaking, he lay on the ground and curled up. Beads of sweat dripped from his forehead, and his whole body felt as if he had been bitten by insects, with bone-eroding pain coming over him. The flesh and blood on his body disappeared visibly to the naked eye, and his thick thighs became emaciated as he breathed. After a few breaths, Lin Yuan, who was still alive, was transformed into a skin and bones by the strange force, without any trace of life left. Shen Shucho frowned. With such power, this person was indeed an evil cultivator. The two girls of the Wen family behind them covered their mouths, their eyes filled with unknown fear. As the saying goes, when beating a dog, it depends on the owner, so have you thought about how to die? Zhao Hongyi's sneer words came from the sedan chair. Then he slowly stepped out from inside and landed opposite Shen Shucho. Zhao Hongye had an evil look on his face and stared at the three people with arrogant eyes. Seeing the two sisters of the Wen family, Zhao Hongye did not hide the lust in his eyes at all. You two beauties, come to my arms obediently. I will love you well. Zhao Hongye smiled lewdly. You are dreaming. Even if I give you a dog, I will never let you, a beast, defile you. Wen Yuning looked angry and scolded. If the Tianwu dynasty falls into the hands of people like you, it will perish sooner or later. Even if we die, we will never let you go. Wen Qingning's pretty face was cold. Ha ha ha, you two beauties can rest assured. You will not die as long as I am here, and the Tianwu dynasty will only get better and better. Being my concubine is no better than being a young lady of the Wen family. When the time comes, you two sisters will serve me together. Quote. Zhao Hongye smiled lewdly, with dirty eyes that made him want to pounce on him on the spot. Dream, even if our sisters die, we will never fall into the hands of a villain like you. Wen Qingning's face turned pale. He immediately picked up the sword beside him and stabbed himself in the neck. Sister, I'll accompany you. Wen Yuning did the same, and finally glanced at Shen Shucho with longing and loving eyes. Young master, please remember to look at me if you have another life. After saying this, he resolutely prepared to die. But when the sword edge was still a few inches away from Shuibai's neck, an invisible force took control. The two sisters of the Wen family looked at the uncontrollable hands with desperate eyes. I said you can't die, then you can't die even if you want to. Zhao Hongye had expected it. Come and kill me directly, Zhao Hongye, you beast. Wen Yuning's beautiful face fell into despair. How about we play something exciting, like what it feels like to personally kill the one you love? Zhao Hongye said sinisterly and viciously. No, please, no. Wen Yuning's expression changed, and the next moment she stabbed Shen Shucho uncontrollably with the sword in her hand. Shen Shucho knew that this was the ability of the old man in black robe, and that he and others could not control it at all. Phew, The sound of the sword cutting into flesh was heard as a long sword penetrated Shen Shuchou's chest from behind. Well, Shen Shuchou turned pale and let out a cry of pain. Blood spurted out from the shocking wound on his chest. At this time, the old man in black robe also released his control over several people. Shen Shuchou's figure instantly fell to the ground. Wen Yuning exclaimed and dropped the sword in her hand. Seeing Shen Shuchou's appearance, tears instantly blurred his eyes, and his whole body seemed to have been drained of strength. Wen Yuning held Shen Shuchou in her arms, and the blood instantly dyed her gorgeous dress red. "Ooh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Wen Yuning hugged Shen Shuchou helplessly. She couldn't imagine that she would actually insert a sword into the love of her heart with her own hands. The suffocating feeling of despair enveloped her, and she couldn't breathe. Shen Shuchou's face was pale and bloodless, and he said in a weak tone, "It's okay, I don't blame you. You don't want to die, you don't want to die, woo, don't die." Wen Yuning was so panicked that she didn't know what to do. She frantically blocked the wound that was bleeding out with her hands. She couldn't accept this scene, even though she was being controlled. Wen Yuning still couldn't accept that she had stabbed Shen Shuchou with her own sword. Feeling Shen Shuchou's continued weakness and sluggishness, Wen Yuning felt that her heart was being clenched tightly by an invisible big hand. "Let him go and we will follow you." Wen Qingning, who was standing aside, forced herself to calm down and said. Hearing these words, Wen Yuning raised her tearful eyes and looked at the man in front of her who had caused the destruction of her family. Now he even controlled himself to stab the love in his heart with his own hands, and the hatred in Wen Yuning's eyes magnified infinitely. But looking at Shen Shuchou who was about to die, Wen Yu stood firm and gritted his teeth. "Save him, then let him go. I'll do whatever you want." She didn't want him to die, but the only one who could save him now was the person in front of him. Wen Yuning was willing to trade herself for Shen Shuchou to make a living. Zhao Hongye showed a trace of boredom on his face and said, "I'm sorry. If I don't save you, I will just let you watch your beloved die with your own eyes, because in this way you will hate me more and more, and then you will wait until I ride on you." Getting more and more excited. But the next moment, Zhao Hongye seemed to have thought of something, and his face turned red and abnormal. "Tell me, what would it be like if I played with you in front of your beloved?" Wen Yuning's face turned pale. "Don't even think about it." Then another wave of the same force controlled Wen Yuning and the two sisters. In his eyes full of tears, he could only see Zhao Hongye approaching him step by step with a lewd smile. "Don't want." Wen Yuning made waves in her heart. Shen Shuchou was lying on the ground, feeling his life force passing away rapidly. His eyes were filled with overwhelming anger, and he was scolding the system in his heart. "Dog system, you really have to be so ruthless. Why should other people be involved?" Shen Shuchou now wished he could kill this guy with one sword. The power the system gave him was only at the peak of the first level. He can only dominate the world, but against monks he can only be ruthlessly crushed. "Ah!" Wen Yuning let out a scream. Zhao Hongye came to him and gently moved. Wen Yuning took off the clothes wrapped around her upper body, revealing a snow-white neck and exposed shoulders. This scene immediately attracted many eyes, as if they were about to hear the news. Yu Ning swallowed it. Zhao Hongye looked at the mountains wrapped in the underwear, his eyes shining and his mouth showing an evil smile. Wen Qingning immediately said with a grudge, "Stop it, beast, let my sister go." Zhao Hongye smiled obscenely. "Little beauty, don't worry, wait until I play with your sister, it will be your turn, ha 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 ha." Zhao Hongye stretched out a pair of magic hands to touch it, and Wen Yuning closed her eyes in despair. The next moment, a light spot lit up in the sky, and a fierce sense of danger beat in Zhao Hongye's heart. Then, the old man in black robe teleported in front of Zhao Hongye and stretched out a pair of dry hands to catch the light. Boom! The figure of the old man in black robe instantly smashed into the wall behind him, and the whole person was directly embedded in it. Zhao Hongye's face was horrified, and before he could react, the whole person was pressed to kneel on the ground by the powerful force. "Ah!" Zhao Hongye's face twisted instantly and he screamed miserably. The ground beneath his feet was cracked by the huge force, and he only felt the bones of his knees shattered. Wen Yuning opened his eyes and saw a beautiful woman in front of him. The woman in front of him had a fairy-like appearance, and she exuded a sense of either reality, as if she was not a mortal woman. Her eyebrows and eyes were gentle as she looked at the Wen sisters. There was a little distress in the woman's eyes, and when she raised her hand, a cloud illuminated her exposed body. Wen Yunning was attracted by the woman in front of him for a while, and a sense of familiarity came over her. After a careful look, Wen Yunning actually found that the woman looked a bit like herself. "Who are you?" Wen Yunning asked delicately. The beautiful woman was silent, and then said gently, "Silly child, I am your mother." This short sentence struck the hearts of the two sisters like a thunderbolt. "Impossible. My mother has passed away. How can you be my mother?" Wen Yunning said it was impossible, but she believed it in her heart. Because the three of them looked too much alike, their eyebrows were all carved by the same person. If the face can be replaced, the familiar feeling from the blood cannot be covered up. Mom left you for a reason, and now I come back to take you away. Don't be afraid, child, Mom will take you back to the sect. The woman said softly. Wen Yunning immediately threw herself into the woman's arms, tears of grievance flowed out, and she choked with sobs, "Mom. Dad is dead, all dead." The woman was silent for a moment, and there was a struggle in her eyes. She spoke the truth in her heart in a gentle tone. "In fact, that was not your father." Wen Yuning's expression froze, and she looked up with disbelief, and trembled as she withdrew from the woman's arms. If it was a lightning strike just now, then this short sentence was like a pair of big hands that completely pulled the two sisters of the Wen family into an endless abyss. "Impossible, no, no," Wen Yunning muttered to herself. Her body trembled helplessly and she fell into Wen Qingning's arms. The man who raised the two sisters could not be their father. Impossible, impossible, the past was vivid in her mind again and again. Now this woman who claimed to be her mother told her that the man who raised her since childhood was not their father. Wen Yunning felt that the world was dark, and deep despair filled her heart. "Your father is from the Netherworld sect. You will know when you enter the sect." The woman looked at the soulless Wen Yunning with heartache. "Before you leave, Mother will clean up the termites that bully you." The woman looked indifferent and moved her jade hand, and Zhao Hongye on the ground immediately spurted out a mouthful of blood. "He is the disciple of the Netherworld sect Master Qi. I hope you will show mercy." The old man in black robe clasped his fists and said respectfully. Upon hearing the name, the woman paused, and a strange color appeared on her cold face. "Your Qi sect master is called Qi Tianxia." The woman looked at the black-robed old man indifferently. The black-robed old man was frightened and answered truthfully, "It is Qi Tianxia, Qi sect master." "I wonder if you are Fairy Xiao." The woman's expression was complicated and her tone was cold. "Didn't you guess it?" "I dare not." The black-robed old man was shocked. At this moment, the black-robed old man was a little fanatical, and he discovered a big secret. In the world of immortal cultivation, there is a sect that is famous for its women, called Xueyu Hall. Xueyu Hall is full of female cultivators, and everyone who comes out of it is as beautiful as a fairy, and has countless pursuers. But the skills of Xueyu Hall specialize in the way of ruthlessness and desirelessness, and it is also among the best in many major sects. More than a decade ago, there was a female cultivator named Fairy Xiao in Xueyu sect who was famous among major sects. It attracted many suitors, but later a news about Fairy Xiao's pregnancy leaked out. At that time, Xueyu Palace was furious because of this news and sent a large number of elders to investigate. All male cultivators who approached were executed, no matter if you were guilty or not. As long as you were one of Fairy Xiao's pursuers, you could not escape the pursuit of Xueyu Palace. The purpose of Xueyu Palace is that female disciples are not allowed to contact male cultivators privately. Not to mention holding hands, even being alone occasionally will be punished, ranging from confinement to abolition of cultivation and expulsion from the sect. Pregnancy like Fairy Xiao is nothing more than poking the sky. Later, there was no news about Fairy Xiao in the cultivator world. But according to the news just now, the old man in black robe has a bold guess, that is, the man who made Fairy Xiao pregnant is the master of his own netherworld Master Qi. Xueyu Palace cleared many cultivators at that time, and the only person who was unexpected was actually a demon cultivator. Although the Netherworld sect is still famous now, it is nothing compared to Xueyu Palace. Fairy Xiao looked at Zhao Hongye coldly and said, "Look up and look at me. Tell me, are you his disciple?" An invisible force enveloped Zhao Hongye, causing him to raise his head uncontrollably with fear on his face, and said tremblingly, "To answer your question, Senior, I am the master's direct disciple. I have a jade pendant here." Zhao Hongye took out a black jade pendant from his arms. Fairy Xiao raised her hand lightly and the jade pendant fell into her hand. Looking at the jade pendant, Fairy Xiao seemed to be trapped in that memory. "Since you are his disciple, I will spare your life and take him away." Fairy Xiao did not return the jade pendant to him, and said coldly. Seeing this, the old man in black robe immediately grabbed the seriously injured Zhao Hongye and flew to the horizon. Wen Yuning came back to her senses from the confusion. Regardless of whether the woman in front of her said that she fell to the ground, her master Shen seemed to be saved. "Please save him." Wen Yuning picked up Shen Shucho and said. Fairy Xiao then noticed Shen Shucho on the ground. When she saw Wen Yuning holding this man, a cold look flashed in Fairy Xiao's eyes. Shen Shucho was lying in her arms, her face as white as a piece of paper. Looking at the woman who looked like a fairy in front of him, Shen Shucho clearly saw a trace of disgust and murderous intent in her eyes. He smiled bitterly in his heart. It seemed that he would not survive today anyway. He could feel that this man was 100 times more terrifying than the old man in black robe just now. "I'm sorry, Mother can't save him, his injuries are too serious." Fairy Xiao shook her head and lied with a look of pity. For a cultivator of her level, saving a seriously injured mortal, let alone elixirs, can be pulled back from the hands of the god of death with just a little true energy. Fairy Xiao could feel Wen Yuning's love for this man. This was something Fairy Xiao would not allow. This was just a mortal, how could he fall in love with her daughter? How dare a lowly insect be stained by the glory of the sun and the moon? "You can definitely save him, you can definitely save him, Mother begs you." Wen Yuning quickly grabbed the hand of Fairy Xiao and said. Hearing Wen Yuning's pleading tone, Fairy Xiao was a little annoyed and knocked her out casually. Wen Qingning behind her suddenly had a strange light flashing in her eyes, and she could still distinguish it from her sister. This person who claimed to be their mother seemed to be reluctant to save Mr. Shen. Just as she was smart, she did not choose to continue to plead for Shen Shucho and continued to remain silent. "Let's go, Mother will take you back to the sect, and you will forget this mortal world in the future." Then Fairy Xiao waved her green jade hand, and a ray of rosy light wrapped the two women and quickly left here. After leaving, a cold and ruthless word fell into the ears of many black-armored soldiers. "Kill him." The black-armored soldiers looked at each other and walked towards Shen Shucho, who was on the verge of death. Shen Shucho was unable to resist and closed his eyes to accept it all silently. He had no ability to choose to hate anyone. Even if he was unwilling and angry, how could he resist as a mortal? At this time, the only thing Shen Shucho thought of was that Zhang Qianzhou was still at home and had not woken up. Shen Shucho drugged Zhang Qianzhou before coming to Wen Mansion. Although he would die, at least he did not want to die in front of Zhang Qianzhou. He did not want to see how painful Zhang Qianzhou, who had been raised since childhood, would be. Shen Shucho did not know what arrangements the system would make later. Puff. One by one, long knives pierced into Shen Shuchu's body, and blood splashed with the wounds. The sharp blade completely cut off Shen Shuchu's way of life. The world in front of him slowly stepped into darkness, and nothingness was shrouded in it. From beginning to end, Fairy Xiao did not say a word to Shen Shucho, nor did she do anything herself. Perhaps in her eyes, talking to a mortal and doing something to a mortal. This was an insult to her. Chapter 31. The two of them were so busy that they had to face each other. "No, sir, no." Zhang Qianzhou suddenly woke up from the bed. Looking at the empty room, Zhang Qianzhou felt a heart-wrenching pain in his heart. Unconsciously, his back was soaked with sweat and tears fell from his eyes. Zhang Qianzhou had a nightmare, in which a gray and white mist was hazy. She was bound by invisible shackles, and Zhang Qianzhou could only see that there seemed to be a human figure in the fog in the dream. The outline made Zhang Qianzhou very familiar. Zhang Qianzhou wanted to go over, but was blocked outside the gray and white fog. Then, Zhang Qianzhou saw that the vague outline was pierced by several sharp blades, and a large amount of blood flowed. Zhang Qianzhou felt a pain in her heart, as if those sharp blades were piercing her heart. Zhang Qianzhou screamed heartbreakingly, but it was useless. She couldn't get into the gray fog. She watched the familiar outline being drowned by blood bit by bit. Zhang Qianzhou's heart was beating like a drum at this moment, beating vigorously as if foreshadowing something bad. No, this is not true. Zhang Qianzhou got off the bed in a panic, muttering in her mouth. That's not Mr. That's not it, it's all fake, it's just a dream. Zhang Qianzhou muttered to herself while looking for Mr. S figure in the yard. It was now the afternoon when the sun was scorching, and Shen Shuqiu would usually lie in the rocking chair under the courtyard to take a nap. But when the panicked Zhang Qianzhou came here, she found that only the rocking chair was missing the familiar figure. With a plop, Zhang Qianzhou fell beside the rocking chair, his eyes blurred by tears, and the feeling of uneasiness spread to his whole body. It felt like all the strength had been drained from her body, and she was extremely weak. Where is the sir? Where are you, sir? Zhang Qianzhou was like a drowning person at this moment, filled with a feeling of suffocation. By the way, Wen Mansion, the sir is in Wen Mansion, and he will be fine. Zhang Qianzhou thought of Wen Mansion, and immediately supported her body, and walked towards Wen Mansion step by step. Shen Shuqiu had taken her to Wen Mansion before, and Zhang Qianzhou left step by step according to the route. Not long after leaving the courtyard, Zhang Qianzhou saw that the once prosperous streets were empty, and not only that, there were also several pools of blood. As he got closer to Wen Mansion, Zhang Qianzhou felt more and more uneasy. Not long after, not far from Wen Mansion, Zhang Qianzhou saw a group of people in black armor walking towards this side. After avoiding this group of people, Zhang Qianzhou went crazy towards the entrance of Wen Mansion. As soon as she reached the door, Zhang Qianzhou was shocked. The once magnificent Wen Mansion seemed like hell at this moment. Corpses were lying everywhere, and the bright red blood soaked the ground. This tragic scene immediately reminded Zhang Qianzhou of the scene in her dream. Deep in her heart, a strong fear emerged. Zhang Qianzhou's face turned pale as she stepped over the corpses and walked towards the inner courtyard. There were corpses all along the way, and Zhang Qianzhou didn't dare to let anyone go. Zhang Qianzhou was afraid. She was afraid that there would be the body of the master among these people. Zhang Qianzhou covered her beating heart, as if it would jump out in the next second. Tears had blurred her eyes, and Zhang Qianzhou couldn't speak. She kept comforting herself in her heart that the master would be fine, he must be fine. Although Zhang Qianzhou didn't know what happened in the Wen Mansion, she only had one idea now, which was to find the master. The death of other people was none of her business. Zhang Qianzhou only cared about the master. After crossing the pond and coming to the backyard, Zhang Qianzhou's eyes, soaked with tears, immediately locked onto the familiar white clothes. But at this moment, the white clothes had been stained red by blood. Boom! Zhang Qianzhou's brain crashed and went blank. He stood still, his face uneasy. After a moment, Zhang Qianzhou's eyes were red, and he rushed over like a madman. After just 2 steps, Zhang Qianzhou fell to the ground because of the huge fear, and his legs had no strength to support him. Zhang Qianzhou climbed on the ground with his hands, not worrying about whether the clothes bought by the master would get dirty. In the past, Zhang Qianzhou cherished it very much, but now Zhang Qianzhou no longer cares so much. When Zhang Qianzhou crawled to the white clothes, he saw the face that had accompanied him for so many days and nights. Zhang Qianzhou was completely desperate. She couldn't believe that all this was true. She just slept for a while, how could she become like this when she woke up? Zhang Qianzhou opened her mouth silently, and she found that she seemed to be unable to speak, and thousands of words were blocked in her throat. Woo woo woo. Zhang Qianzhou hugged Shen Shuqiu's body tightly and cried loudly. Zhang Qianzhou gently touched Shen Shuqiu's face with his hand and looked at the several wounds on his body. Zhang Qianzhou didn't know how long she had been crying, and her tears seemed to have dried up. The happy memories of the past have turned into a cold corpse at this moment. Seeing the gentleman he longed for turned into a corpse, Zhang Qianzhou was so desperate that he suffocated. Jia Jia Jia, you want revenge. Suddenly a voice sounded in Zhang Qianzhou's ears. There was a dark wind blowing around, and the cold breath surrounded Zhang Qianzhou. Who are you? Zhang Qianzhou asked hoarsely. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, do you want revenge? Do you want to know who killed your husband? The voice sounded again. Zhang Qianzhou said directly without hesitation. Who did this? There was no one around. How did this voice appear and who was it? Zhang Qianzhou didn't even show fear. Her husband was dead and she had nothing to fear. Now she just wants to know who did all this, and she wants to avenge her husband. The next moment, pictures appeared in Zhang Qianzhou's mind. It was the scene of Shen Shuqiu in Wen Mansion. In that scene, Zhang Qianzhou saw her husband being stabbed on the ground by Wen Yuning, and she saw a woman appearing on the horizon. Finally, she saw the woman instigating everyone to kill her beloved husband. Haha, woo-woo, it's you again. It's all your fault. It was you who killed Sir. After watching the entire clip, Zhang Qianzhou seemed to be crying and laughing, and his childish face was like a ghost. Zhang Qianzhou originally hated the two daughters of the Wen family, and now it was because of these two that she killed her husband. Zhang Qianzhou's murderous intention towards the two girls burst out uncontrollably. Shuiyu Palace, Netherworld Palace, Fairy Xiu, Wen Qingning, Wen Yuning, Zhao Hongye. Zhang Qianzhou kept these names firmly in mind. Tell me, how can I get my revenge? Zhang Qianzhou asked. She didn't ask what she had to pay. She was willing to pay anything as long as she could keep her husband alive. Follow me, I'll teach you how to practice, and within 20 years, you can kill them all, he, how about that? The voice said hey. Good, Zhang Qianzhou said coldly on his face. Hey, why is there anyone alive here? At this moment, a voice came from not far behind Zhang Qianzhou. Then there was another voice, whatever she does, just kill her. That's right, kill him quickly and get something valuable. The sound of footsteps was gradually approaching Zhang Qianzhou. They were also part of the group that killed your husband. Do you want to kill them? I can lend you my power. Zhang Qianzhou didn't reply, silence was the answer. Hey, go ahead and kill them all. The next moment, a ball of black energy appeared next to Zhang Qianzhou. An indescribable force appeared in the body. Zhang Qianzhou's eyes were as dark as ink, like the 9 secluded corners of the night, and a cold and deadly murderous intention emerged. The black armored soldier stopped, looking at the sudden black energy, with a look of horror on his face, and ran back without even thinking. Zhang Qianzhou controlled the black energy to penetrate from his 7 orifices, his body suddenly expanded, and then exploded into a ball of blood and mud. What's the situation? The black armored soldiers outside heard the screams inside and swarmed in. They were frightened to death by this scene. Before they could evacuate, the murderous intent in Zhang Qianzhou's black eyes was locked. In an instant, the bodies of these black armored soldiers were blown into blood mist one after another, leaving no bones left. Finally, Zhang Qianzhou carefully controlled the black energy to wrap Shen Shuqiu's body and fly away from here, following the guidance of the voice in his heart. All this kind of scene was clearly seen by Shen Shuqiu. He was dead but not completely dead. Shen Shuqiu turned into a pair of invisible eyes and watched everything quietly. The sky was dark and the moon was dim. Xuanji Domain, Qiyu Cliff. The gloomy sky was dark and the moon was dim, and the dark clouds were dense and seemed to swallow the earth. In the dark cloud, there was a flash of lightning, and a human figure could be seen vaguely. The dark and damp bottom of the cliff exuded a cool breath, mixed with gusts of gloomy wind. Boom! The next moment, a black lightning as thick as a bucket shot down from the dark cloud. The cliff collapsed, the rubble splashed around, and a terrifying crack appeared on the ground. Roar! At the bottom of the damp cliff, an angry roar followed by the black lightning. Then a voice came out. You fool, you come again, do you really think I'm easy to bully? A huge figure instantly jumped up from the bottom of the cliff, and the wings that covered the sky and the sun spread out and flew to the opposite side of the dark clouds. This is a terrifying monster with a tiger head. The most shocking thing is that this tiger monster also has a pair of huge wings. At this moment, the tiger monster's fangs are open, and its yellow-brown pupils are looking at the dark clouds with fear. Through the dark clouds, there is a black-clothed girl with a cold face. You fool, you come to cause trouble again and again, today I will make you come and never come back. The tiger monster's pupils burst with murderous intent. Before it can make a move, a black lightning in the dark clouds shot towards it at an extremely fast speed. The black lightning is wrapped in a terrifying power, and the whole world seems to be shaken. The tiger monster's pupils shrank, and there were only 4 words in his mind. Don't resist. The tiger demon's huge body quickly disappeared from the spot in an attempt to avoid the lightning. Before it could breathe a sigh of relief, a warning of danger sounded in its heart, and a cold murderous intent locked onto it. The black lightning that had dodged seemed to have intelligence, and turned straight towards it. This was not over yet, and several more roars exploded in the dark clouds. A large net woven by black lightning swept over the sky and earth. Boom! No matter how fast the tiger demon was, it could not escape this large net flashing with lightning. The tiger demon's huge body was struck by lightning and fell to the bottom of the cliff. The black net bound it tightly in place and could not move. The smell of burned meat filled the air, and the white bones under the flesh and blood were vaguely visible. Ah! The tiger demon let out a heart-wrenching roar. The dark clouds in the sky slowly fell, and then a girl walked out of it. The girl was wearing a black tight-fitting outfit, and her beautiful face was indifferent and ruthless, as if she had never eaten incense in the world. There was a cold murderous intent in the girl's dark black pupils, and her whole body was wrapped in black lightning. She stared at the tiger demon with cold eyes. "You actually became a spirit, how is this possible?" The tiger demon felt the terrifying pressure brought to it by the girl in front of it, and its ferocious face was full of disbelief. It was originally a different species in the tiger clan with a huge wing, and its cultivation speed was not comparable to other species. In just 300 years, it has reached the peak of the out-of-body stage, and is only one step away from the spirit stage. In its life, no human or fellow tribesmen have ever brought pressure to it. But 3 years ago, a girl suddenly appeared in her territory. The girl repeatedly troubled it, and the girl at that time was only in the nascent soul stage. No one has ever challenged its majesty like this, so the girl is naturally not the opponent of the tiger demon, but every time the tiger demon can't do anything to her. The girl had a strange and unpredictable ability, and she could escape from it every time. It was a year later when they fought again. The girl's strength had leapt from the late nascent soul stage to the out-of-body stage, which had already shocked the tiger monster. The tiger monster could already feel the pressure from the girl's black lightning, and could vaguely suppress it. But this time, the girl's strength had actually entered the spiritualization stage from the out-of-body stage. How could this be possible? The tiger monster was extremely shocked. Although it is a recognized fact that some human geniuses have a faster cultivation speed than monsters. But the girl's speed was a bit too fast. The tiger monster suspected that this girl who seemed to be younger was actually a 1,000-year-old monster. In this fight, it was ruthlessly crushed before it even made a move. This was a bit of a blow to the proud tiger monster. "You are a bit too weak." The girl's voice was as cold as winter snow. "Kill me if you want to, don't insult the tiger." The tiger demon glared at him angrily. "What's your name? Can you tell me now?" The girl ignored his anger and said calmly. The tiger demon was so angry that he could only. Nengen stared. "My name is Di Jing." The tiger demon hesitated for a moment and said it out. The girl's eyes were dull and she said calmly, "The name is too ugly, just call me Xiao He." "Bah, you treat me as a dog." The tiger demon's pupils were angry, and he was about to stand up and fight regardless of the burning of the black lightning. But the girl's words made it honest. "You want to live or die, be my dog, and I will let you become a god." It is really unsatisfactory to cultivate to this level. Who would want to die like this? And the girl's last words made Di Jing a little moved. If there is no great opportunity to fall on it, it will take at least 80 years for Di Jing to become a god through slow cultivation. Di Jing did not doubt the girl's words at all. As for her ghost-like cultivation speed, Di Jing had never heard of it. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would not believe it. Di Jing calmed down and said, "How can I become a god?" This sentence also means that he is willing to be the girl's dog in disguise. "Open your mind and purple palace," the girl just said coldly. Hearing this, Di Jing hesitated for a moment and then opened his mind and purple palace to the girl. The next moment, black mist appeared in the girl's hand and instantly poured into it. There was a black lightning symbol in Di Jing's mind and purple palace, from which he could feel the extreme danger. Di Jing knew that this was a unique mark, and if he dared to be presumptuous again, the girl would kill him with a thought. It is better to live in disgrace than to die. Di Jing comforted himself in his heart, and the next second Di Jingu showed a trace of ecstasy on his face. A powerful force burst out from it, and the injuries all over his body disappeared instantly, replaced by a new life. "I have become a god, ha ha ha." Di Jing shouted happily. The huge roar shook the cliffs on both sides and cracks appeared, echoing between heaven and earth. After the intense joy, there was awe from the bottom of his heart. This black-clothed girl could save him 80 years of cultivation with just one move. This also made Di Jing more certain that this girl was definitely a 1,000-year-old monster and might even be the reincarnation of a powerful person. What do you need me to do? Di Jing looked at the girl respectfully and said. Turn into a dog first. The girl said calmly with her black eyes. Di Jing's face suddenly became aggrieved. He, a tiger monster, was going to turn into a dog. But when he saw the girl's calm eyes, Di Jing shuddered. He had no doubt that he might die at any time if he didn't obey the order. Di Jing gritted his teeth and his body shape suddenly changed. A huge black dog appeared at the bottom of the cliff. Too big. The girl just took a look and said. His body shape changed again as the voice fell. Di Jing never thought that one day he would turn into a black dog with a leg less than 5 centimeters long. Woof woof woof. Although he was dissatisfied in his heart, he called out twice and shook his short tail. Shame filled Di Jing's whole body. The girl nodded lightly and then stopped looking at it. She said to her heart, why do you have to subdue such a waste? It can't be considered a waste. It is a black-winged tiger from the Tiger Demon clan. It will be a great fighting force around you in the future. It is also a good knife to help you revenge. The voice quickly responded to the girl from her rear. The girl was none other than Zhang Qianqiu of that year. Spring, summer, autumn and winter, the years passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 7 years have passed. Mr. S. death seemed to have happened yesterday. In 7 years, the hatred in Zhang Qianqiu's heart has grown into a towering tree. Zhang Qianqiu wanted to kill all those people every day and night, but the voice in her heart kept telling her that the time was not right. Her cultivation was not enough to deal with those people. She could only become stronger through more killing. For 7 years, since Zhang Qianqiu learned to practice, she has been immersed in endless killing, including monsters and humans. Including the cultivators of the Nether Gate and the Water Moon Palace, Zhang Qianqiu killed the most. She has been practicing the skills given to her by the voice, the heavenly demon Void Thunder Record. During the day, Zhang Qianqiu is a terrifying killer of the magic path. At night, Zhang Qianqiu will follow her master like she did before. Zhang Qianqiu will hug her master's body to sleep every night. For her, only in this way can her heart, which is numb from killing, become warm. Only by feeling the cold body of her master can she gradually increase the hatred in Zhang Qianqiu's heart. All the time, she doesn't want to kill everyone. In these 7 years, Zhang Qianqiu's growth has been seen by Shen Shuqiu. He can't speak, and Zhang Qianqiu can't find him. Shen Shuqiu knew that he would only be successful if Zhang Qianqiu grew up to be the evil villain in this world. The two girls were very close, and the two girls were very close. Water Moon Palace, by the Jade Fairy Lake. 2 beautiful figures sat side by side. The girl had a beautiful face, and her every frown and movement was like the bright moon on earth. The two girls had very similar eyebrows, but their temperaments were different. The girl on the right had delicate features but a hint of indifference and arrogance, and her eyes were as cold as ice, as if the whole world had nothing to do with her. The girl on the left had a kind of delicate beauty, and her bright eyes were filled with worry, as if she had something on her mind. These 2 graceful girls were the 2 daughters of the Wen family in the imperial capital, Wen Qingning and Wen Yuning. You have wasted so much time, you should learn to improve your cultivation. Wen Qingning said coldly. Wen Yuning pursed her pink lips and said, she asked you to come. Wen Qingning frowned slightly and was a little unhappy, that's our mother. Hearing this, Wen Yuning chuckled, mother. She is not. As soon as these words came out, Wen Yuning immediately felt an extreme murderous intent coming from her. Sister, have you forgotten what happened 7 years ago? Don't you want to seek justice for your father? Don't you want to avenge Mr. Shen? Wen Yuning didn't care about this murderous intent at all. There were tears in her stubborn eyes, and she looked straight at Wen Qingning. He is not my father. What does a mortal have to do with me? Wen Qingning said indifferently. Wen Yuning laughed bitterly, her already weak body trembling and her face pale. Ha ha, sister, you have really changed, I don't recognize you anymore. People will change. Wen Qingning's tone was still so cold. Is it because of the Supreme Forgetfulness record? Will the cultivation obtained by abandoning the 7 emotions and 6 desires really be good? A person without 7 emotions and 6 desires, is that still a person? Wen Yuning's delicate face firmly stared at the cold Wen Qingning beside her. Wen Qingning's emotionless eyes looked at the lake lightly without answering. Wen Yuning, who never got a response, was like a dehydrated fish whose strength was drained, and her face was full of despair. I want to go home and take a look. After a moment, Wen Yuning said with a dead look. I will report this to my mother. After I have resolved my thoughts, if you are still like this, I will not be able to stop my mother from marrying you to that person. You can do whatever you want. Wen Qingning said this coldly, and turned away without even looking at her. You can do whatever you want, hee. Wen Yuning laughed at herself, and 2 lines of tears gradually slid down as she murmured, Dad. Master Shen, Zhang Qianqiu, Yuning misses you so much. Since the 2 sisters of the Wen family were taken back to Shuiyu Palace by Fairy Xiaoyu 7 years ago, Wen Yuning also knew everything that happened. The 2 of them were the children that Fairy Xiaoyu and Qi Tianxia of the Netherworld sect had secretly produced. Fearing that the sect would know about it, Fairy Xiaoyu found Wen Changhao in the Tianwu dynasty to make a deal. The content was to help her raise the 2 young sisters, and the reward was to give him supreme power and a huge fortune. Wen Changhao, who was just an ordinary official at the time, naturally could not refuse this condition and agreed without thinking. At the same time, Wen Yuning also learned from Fairy Xiaoyu that she and her sister seemed to have special physiques. Her sister was a water spirit, and she was an ice spirit. In Fairy Xiaoyu's heart, she was better than her sister, but Wen Yuning was very resistant. She resisted everything. Fairy Xiaoyu was too harsh on the 2 sisters. There was no blood thicker than water kinship as imagined, but more ruthless indifference. All disciples of Shuiyu Palace must practice the core technique, the supreme forgetting love record. Practicing this technique will gradually abandon one's 7 emotions and 6 desires. That is, joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, hate, desire, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. The more you abandon, the faster your cultivation will increase. Wen Yuning didn't want to become a walking corpse without emotions, so she always resisted this technique. What's more, Wen Yuning couldn't forget what happened 7 years ago. That trace of hatred was still hidden in her heart, and she had always resisted practicing this technique. Wen Yuning was afraid that one day she would forget that hatred because of the supreme forgetfulness record. After her father's death, no one in the entire Wen mansion was alive, and the figure in her heart. What's even more ridiculous is that the culprit who caused all this was actually the disciple of her nominal father. Fairy Xiaoyu had been preventing her from taking revenge and imprisoned her in Shuiyu Palace all day long. Living in dire straits every day, the hatred in her heart. She couldn't release her hatred, and there was no other technique for her to practice. Even her life and death were in the hands of Fairy Xiaoyu. During these 7 years, Wen Yuning's strength was barely at the level of Lingji. And Wen Qingning had already emerged as a leader of the younger generation in the world of immortal cultivation, and her cultivation had even reached the golden core stage. Now Fairy Xiaoyu gave Wen Yuning a final ultimatum. If she didn't practice the supreme forgetting love record well, she would be betrothed to Zhao Hongye. The person she hated the most in her heart. Wen Yuning's eyes were dull, and clear tears couldn't stop dripping. Fairy Xiaoyu was forcing her to submit, forcing her to become an obedient and good daughter, forcing her to become a walking corpse without emotions, just like her sister. Wen Yuning didn't intend to give up, she wanted to live for herself once. The reason why I chose to go home to have a look was, firstly, because I missed him, and secondly, because a demon appeared in the world of immortal cultivation recently, who specialized in killing people from Shuiyu Palace and Yuming sect. If I happened to be killed by that person this time, it would be a relief for Wen Yuning, who was in tears. If not, Wen Yuning would never give in. The most important point is that Wen Yuning wanted to go back and see if she could find Zhang Qianqiu. I guess she was as desperate as I was, not knowing whether she was alive or dead. The autumn sun was rising high in the sky. 3 days later, Wen Yuning left Shuiyu Palace alone and went to the Tianwu True World thousands of miles away. At the same time, Zhang Qianqiu, dressed in black, hid in the dark clouds and quickly moved in one direction, followed by a black dog who had no desire to live. The journey was smooth, and Wen Yunning did not meet the demon who hunted the monks of Shuiyu Palace. It took only one day to reach the place where she grew up, Tianwu Dynasty. The emperor of the Tianwu Dynasty at this moment is a puppet pushed out by Zhao Hongye. Compared with the Tianwu Dynasty in memory, it has become more prosperous now, and even the surrounding territories have expanded on a large scale. It's just that the dynasty that should be sunny now is a little different. A large black cloud shrouded the sky, and a bad feeling arose in Wen Yuning's heart. Without caring about so much, Wen Yuning rushed to the Wen mansion. In the past 7 years, the unattended Wen mansion has become a little dilapidated, and the plaque at the door is covered with dust. The vermilion door has also fallen off and rotted, with a white seal on it. Wen Yuning, standing in front of the door, has already burst into tears, staring at the familiar place in her mind, and time seems to have returned to the nightmare of blood flowing into a river. On the other side of the street, Zhang Qianqiu took Shen Shuchu's body and walked towards home step by step. Look, sir, we are back. Let's go back to our home. Sir, Qianqiu really misses you, especially you. Sir, it would be nice if you could say something to me. Qianqiu loves you. Sir. Di Jing followed behind, feeling horrified. Is this woman mentally ill? Is there any special hobby, like dead people? In Di Jing's eyes, the man in Zhang Qianqiu's arms was obviously a body without a soul. Her master spoke to the corpse with a face full of love, and Di Jing felt a chill. Di Jing didn't dare to say it out loud, and could only exclude it in his heart. Not long after, Zhang Qianqiu took Shen Shuqiu to the door of the house in his memory. There were whispers from inside, and it seemed that this place had been replaced. But Zhang Qianqiu didn't care. In her heart, whether there were people here or not, it was her home. Without knocking on the door, Zhang Qianqiu pushed open the door and walked in slowly. Who are you and how did you get into my house? The sound of the door opening instantly attracted 2 figures, one old and one young. The old man looked at Zhang Qianqiu with a bad face. The young man beside him was deeply attracted by Zhang Qianqiu's stunning face. Woof woof woof. Di Jing barked immediately, knowing that it was time for him to show off. Get lost, Zhang Qianqiu said coldly. The old man and the young man's eyes suddenly became dull, and they fell to the ground in the next second. Di Jing stood there awkwardly, at a loss. Zhang Qianqiu ignored it, and stroked Shen Shuchu's cheek affectionately and said softly, Sir, look, this is our home. Zhang Qianqiu took Shen Shuchu's arm and walked through every corner of the villa, trying to find traces of them living here at that time. Unfortunately, they were not the familiar appearances. The only thing that remained unchanged was the rocking chair in the courtyard. Zhang Qianqiu put Shen Shuqiu on the rocking chair and came behind him to rock gently. There was a strong desire in his black eyes. Sir, do you like it? Staring at the bloodless lips, Zhang Qianqiu couldn't control his inner desire and lowered his head and slowly pressed against them. Cold lips collided with the warm tip of the tongue, licking frantically, savoring it all. Zhang Qianqiu's breathing gradually became heavier, and her whole body twisted unconsciously. Zhang Qianqiu had no sense of taboo between teacher and student in her heart. There was only the love that erupted from the deep desire. This was not the first time she had done this. Almost every night Zhang Qianqiu had to kiss deeply before she could fall asleep peacefully. Even if the teacher was still there, she would not be able to resist. Di Jing on the side turned his head away tactfully, and was more certain in his heart that this woman must have a special fetish, plus a serious brain disease. I don't know how long it has been, Zhang Qianqiu is still immersed in the lips. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared outside the courtyard. When Wen Yuning's worried eyes saw this scene, the shock in his heart was self-evident. Almost blurted out, Zhang Qianqiu. The two of them were in a state of panic, and the two of them were in a state of panic. Zhang Qianqiu raised his deep black eyes slightly, and a murderous intent suddenly bloomed. Wen Yuning instantly exuded a chill that was breathtaking, and a trace of fear emerged from the bottom of her heart. In an instant, Zhang Qianqiu's figure disappeared from the spot, and a terrifying black shadow suddenly appeared in front of her. In Wen Yuning's shocked eyes, a hand tightly grasped her snow-white neck and pressed her against the wall. Boom! Spider web-like cracks appeared on the wall behind him, extending to all sides. I've been waiting for you for a long time. This was the first sentence Zhang Qianqiu said, without concealing the cold murderous intent bursting out of his black pupils. Zhang Qian Chu. Wen Yuning's face turned pale, and her beautiful eyes were full of shock. Her throat rolled, and she managed to utter a few words. Looking at the familiar yet strange black-clothed girl in front of her, strange emotions surged in her heart. The little girl who followed Mr. Shen's ass in the past has grown up now. Although she didn't know what Zhang Qianqiu had experienced in these years, the other party had also embarked on the path of cultivating immortals. Her cultivation level also made it impossible for her to tell. Looking at the bloodthirsty murderous intent in the black pupils, Wen Yuning felt sad. Her breathing became weaker and weaker, and Wen Yuning didn't regret dying in Zhang Qianqiu's hands. I think Zhang Qianqiu must have been very painful when he saw Mr. Shen's death. After all, Mr. Shen's death was also implicated by herself, which became Wen Yuning's lingering nightmare. Killing her beloved, this heart-wrenching feeling has been with her for 7 years. Now dying in Zhang Qianqiu's hands is also a kind of relief for her. Wen Yuning simply closed her eyes slowly, tears falling from the corners of her eyes. You can't kill her now. She has the mark of the crossing tribulation stage. You are not a match for the crossing tribulation stage yet. The voice appeared in Zhang Qianqiu's heart, trying to stop her. In fact, Zhang Qianqiu had always been hesitant. With her cultivation in the transformation stage, it was enough to kill a Lingji stage with a glance. As a woman, Zhang Qianqiu knew that Wen Yuning had always loved Mr. in her heart. Although Zhang Qianqiu hated her very much, Mr. S death was not caused by her, but it was also indirectly related. The whole thing was because of the two of them, and Mr. died. There were only 2 reasons why Zhang Qianqiu hesitated to kill directly. One was that she had always loved Mr. deeply, and the other was that if Mr. S spirit was in heaven, he probably wouldn't want her to kill her. Even after 7 years of killing, her heart had long been numb. When she saw this woman who she hated again, Zhang Qianqiu still hesitated. After hesitating, Zhang Qianqiu released the hand that was strangling Wen Yuning's life and death. Ahem. Wen Yuning lost her footing and fell to the ground, coughing and gasping. You won't kill me. Wen Yuning, who had recovered her breath, said in a slightly surprised manner. Killing you will only make the master unhappy. Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you or I will really kill you. Zhang Qianqiu returned to Shen Shuqiu and buried his head in his cold arms and said lightly. Wen Yuning did not leave. She kept looking at the motionless Shen Shuqiu in her eyes. She wanted to get closer to the man she had been thinking about in her heart. When she approached Wen Yuning, she found that the Master Shen in front of her was still a cold corpse. Seeing Zhang Qianqiu lying quietly in Master Shen's arms, Wen Yuning's nose was sour. I'm sorry. Wen Yuning lowered her eyes and said. Zhang Qianqiu sneered and said nothing. If it wasn't for Master Shen saving me, this wouldn't have happened. Zhang Qianqiu, do you know that I have been living in regret for the past 7 years? I hate myself and everyone who hurt Master Shen. I have been trapped in Shuiyu Palace for these years and can't get out. There is no one around me. I really want to find you but I have never had the chance. I don't ask for your forgiveness, because I can't forgive myself either. Wen Yuning seemed to want to tell all the words she said over the years. Wen Yuning's eyes always fell on Shen Shuqiu. As soon as she finished speaking, she couldn't help but take a step forward. As soon as she took a step, Wen Yuning was bounced back by an invisible barrier. Wen Yuning was slightly startled. She knew that Zhang Qianqiu didn't want to get close to Master Shen. Yuki's face was not angry, so she just sat next to Di Jing, stroking the round dog head back and forth. Di Jing's body stiffened, stared at her, grinning and trying to scare the woman away. It was eating the melon with great relish. Why did it suddenly change its attitude? Woman, how presumptuous of you. Zhang Qianqiu, I have no other. I only hope that you can kill everyone and kill everyone who harmed Mr. Shen. Even this Tianwu dynasty has nothing to miss. After all, our family is gone. Quote. It's okay for you to let me be an undercover agent of Shuiyu Palace. I just hope you can kill everyone. Wen Yuning raised her head, with an unprecedented killing intent in her eyes. A dark light flashed in Zhang Qianqiu Gujing Wubo's black eyes. I will kill everyone. You don't need to remind me of this. Zhang Qianqiu had only 2 purposes in returning to the Tianwu dynasty. The first was to take his husband to take one last look at their home. The second is to use the entire Tianwu dynasty as a melting pot to sacrifice everyone to increase their cultivation. To her, this place was a sad place, so what if it was destroyed? The terrifying clouds had unknowingly enveloped the entire Tianwu dynasty, and as soon as she thought, black lightning would pour down from the sky. Wherever the black thunder falls, no grass will grow, and the place will only become a lifeless ruin. This is the best. Wen Yuning felt relieved. Then Wen Yuning looked a little melancholy and regretful, talking to herself as if recalling the past. Master Shen didn't accept my love at the beginning. This is a regret that I have always had in my heart. I think if there really is a next life, I will definitely pounce on Mr. Shen without hesitation. Ha, it may sound a bit naive to say it, but I just fell in love at first sight with Mr. Shen. Zhang Qianqiu, sometimes I really envy you. You have been with Mr. Shen since you were a child. You can experience Mr. Shen's meticulous love and receive all kinds of care from Mr. Shen. As for me, I can't experience anything. I'm just a human being. Successor. I have never even had Mr. Shen's warm embrace, let alone what Mr. Shen tastes like. At this point, the air around Wen Yuning seemed to solidify, and the terrifying murderous intention almost became a reality. Wen Yuning didn't care at all about the murderous threat, and still thought to herself, Zhang Qianqiu, what do you think Mr. Shen's lips taste like? As soon as the words fell, Wen Yuning's eyes full of deep longing met Zhang Qianqiu's dark eyes without a trace of timidity. Di Jing swallowed a sip of saliva and quietly moved his feet to one side. I couldn't help but scream in my heart. Sister, please be kind and say less. What kind of sin have I suffered to be caught between you? This murderous intention coming from the cold spring of Juyu made Di Jing tremble all over. Zhang Qianqiu suddenly appeared surrounded by black thunder, and a dangerous light flashed in his eyes. Rumble. Black thunder pierced the sky in the clouds, and the sky and the earth changed color. Zhang Qianqiu's red lips said coldly, Wen Yuning, I won't kill you for the sake of your husband's face, but that doesn't mean you can be presumptuous. Why should I explain to you what your husband's lips taste like? He is mine and you will steal it for the rest of your life. If you don't want to leave, I'll give you 3 breaths to get out of my sight before my patience is gone. So I really envy you. Wen Yuning smiled bitterly. Wen Yuning felt sour in her heart. She saw the scene when she entered the door. She couldn't grab it when Mr. Shen was alive, but she still couldn't grab it when Mr. Shen was gone. Boom. The next second, a terrifying force came out of Wen Yuning's delicate body, and she flew straight out of the other courtyard. Zhang Qianqiu did not kill him, but this attack almost cost Wen Yuning half his life. His delicate body was in a mess, and bright red blood overflowed from the corners of his mouth. Roll. Zhang Qianqiu was too lazy to listen to her anymore and sent her out directly, then put up a barrier to prevent Wen Yuning from entering. You get out too. Zhang Qianqiu glanced at the shivering Di Jing at the side and drove him out. Di Jing drooped his round head and left the female devil. I am offending whoever I am. Zhang Qianqiu only wants to be alone with her husband before destroying the Tianwu dynasty, and does not want anyone to disturb her. One last look back at this former home. Wen Yuning did not leave just yet. The wounds on her body were too painful, and the wounds in her heart could not hurt. The seeds of hatred have already sprouted and are deeply rooted in my heart. Wen Yuning leaned against the wall haggardly, just like that day 7 years ago when she left here crying. She had nothing to care about anymore. Wenfu, full of laughter, was gone, and the young Master Shen she loved in her heart also left because of her. Even the sister she had grown up with had changed. She had become so cold and indifferent that she no longer recognized her. She and Zhang Qianqiu are so similar. They are both people destroyed by hatred. They both have no homes. Unlike Zhang Qianqiu, Wen Yuning couldn't even grasp her own destiny or see clearly. Wen Yuning, who was originally desperate, felt a glimmer of hope ignite like a spark from the moment she saw Zhang Qianqiu again. Zhang Qianqiu is the flame of revenge in Wen Yuning's heart. Even if this is just a flame that begins to burn, Wen Yuning firmly believes that a spark can start a prairie fire. There will be a day when Wen Yuning can see that group of people and pay the due price for themselves. During this period, Wen Yuning wanted to live well, and she wanted to see that day with her own eyes. You were kicked out too. Wen Yuning noticed that someone was looking at her and turned to look at Shen Jing's dog head. Di Jing, who was discovered, turned his head in embarrassment, mentally sorting out the gossip he had heard. There seems to be some big secret between the two women and the male corpse. Especially when his master did something like that to a corpse, Di Jing felt sick. Not only that, even this woman who appeared out of nowhere looked very interested in the corpse. Di Jing really couldn't understand these human women. He couldn't understand anything about love and love, but he felt like he was getting wiser. Fortunately, I am not interested in any of this. How can I enjoy improving my cultivation level? Di Jing showed contempt. Wen Yuning suddenly felt dumbfounded. She felt like she was being despised by a dog. Wen Yuning's cultivation was not high enough to realize that this funny black dog was actually a great demon. Tisk, 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 isn't this the superior second lady of the Wen family? At this time, a mocking tone came. Hearing this familiar voice, Wen Yuning raised her head and looked up. When she saw the person coming, she was filled with hatred and said, Zhao Hongye. Hey, I'm a little flattered that Miss Wen misses me so much and doesn't call me so affectionately. Zhao Hongye walked over in a gorgeous robe, the sarcasm in his eyes overflowing. Behind him was the hunchbacked old man who was always buried in a black robe. The old man's eyes hidden in the shadows were immediately locked on Di Jing, who was lying beside him. After looking back and forth but finding nothing wrong, he suddenly frowned. As soon as he arrived here, the old man in black robe had a vague feeling that something was wrong, and the dark clouds in the sky seemed to indicate ominous meaning. In my heart, I felt confused, as if I had a clue about my own death. Now that he had suddenly left his body 3 years ago, and this place was the territory of the Netherworld sect, who could be his death? It couldn't be this stupid-looking black dog. The old man in black robe kept comforting himself. I kill you. Wen Yuning stood up, with murderous intent in her eyes. Seeing the enemy deep in his heart again, the culprit who destroyed the Wen family and killed Mr. Shen. Hatred instantly defeated her reason, and Zhao Hongyi's evil deeds became worse and worse in the past 7 years. The entire Tianwu dynasty was reduced to his harem, and the puppet emperor specially captured some young girls for his enjoyment. Among them were some women from small sects, all of whom could not escape Zhao Hongyi's clutches. Thinking of this, a long sword appeared in Wen Yuning's hand, and it stabbed away with a cold light. Zhao Hongye sneered at the corner of his mouth and did not dodge, allowing the sword to strike. In an instant, the long sword in Wen Yuning's hand was shattered by the protective energy, and her wrist was grabbed and pulled towards her. What a stupid idiot, she dares to go up no matter what her strength is. Di Jing lay aside and complained. Did Miss Wen couldn't help but come into my arms so quickly? Tisk, 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 I think Miss Wen, who was so high and mighty back then, is now reduced to talking to a dead dog. Zhao Hongye looked at the delicate body in his hand and mocked. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Di Jing, who was lying on his back, suddenly stood up, opened his fangs and looked at him angrily. If it weren't for Zhang Qianzhou inside, Di Jing would have slapped this ignorant ant to death. Zhao Hongye didn't care at all, he was just a dog in his eyes. And kicked to death. He focused all his attention on the watery Wen Yuning, but he didn't know that the fatal crisis had quietly enveloped him. Miss Wen, you might as well guess how I knew you were here. Zhao Hongyi's eyes were full of teasing. She told you. Wen Yuning's struggle to break free faltered, and her pretty face turned pale. Was she so eager to give herself to the person she hated the most? You're right, but there's no surprise. If I were to say, it's meaningless for you to stay in the Shuiyu Palace. You can't experience the bliss of the world as a woman without desire. It's a pity that I can't taste your beautiful sister, but I still have you. Tonight I will let you experience the life of a god. Zhao Hongyi's eyes were crawling with lustful insects, and he wanted to kill this delicate Wen Yuning on the spot. Zhao Hongye, don't you check the almanac before you go out? The pale Wen Yuning suddenly thought of something and changed her tone and said coldly. Zhao Hongyi's smile froze and he said, what do you mean? It seems that my so-called mother accidentally wants you to die. Wen Yuning didn't say it clearly, but her cold face seemed to explain everything. Zhao Hongye thought Wen Yuning was just trying to scare him, and said with a rebellious look on his face, who can hurt me here, who dares to hurt me? Looking at Zhao Hongyi's ignorant look, Wen Yuning sneered, "Do you think I'm bluffing?" The next moment, Wen Yuning shouted at the other courtyard, "Zhang Qianqiu, if you don't do it, how long are you going to hug Mr. Shen and kiss him?" As soon as these words came out, a terrifying pressure in the other courtyard instantly enveloped the two of them. Zhao Hongye was stunned, and the black-robed old man behind him felt cold on his back and shouted in shock, "Young master, hurry up, use the great teleportation talisman to go quickly." Before Zhao Hongye could make any move, a black thunder shot out and blasted him out. Then, Zhang Qianqiu's shadow appeared above the heads of several people, and the terrifying aura on his body was like the annihilation of the devil. The black-robed old man had a dry throat and fear in his eyes. He felt the terrifying pressure. Zhao Hongye, who was struck by the black thunder, did not die. He got up from the pile of stones in a panic. His face was no longer as unruly as before. He took out the paper talisman without hesitation and injected the true energy into the whole person, and disappeared instantly. Death talisman, and the great teleportation talisman. I want to see how long you can run. Zhang Qianqiu's eyes were cold, and his figure instantly turned into a black shadow and chased after him at a high speed. Senior. The black-robed old man wanted to avenge the name of the sect, but he only heard a cold voice from the horizon. Kill him. The black-robed old man had not yet reacted, but he felt a terrifying pressure blooming around him. Looking with horrified eyes, he saw that the body of the harmless black dog on the ground was rapidly growing. In an instant, a shadow as big as a hill enveloped him. Crack! Di Jing twisted his head fiercely, and his bones made a crisp sound. He looked at the ant under his feet with a grim smile. I can finally change back to my original form. I, the old man, will play with you. In an instant, a huge palm that covered the sky and the sun slapped down. Boom! The powerful force directly slapped the ground under his feet and collapsed. Smoke and dust rose, and the aftermath spread to the surroundings, knocking down rows of houses like autumn wind sweeping fallen leaves. The old man quickly dodged to the side, trembling all over and with fear in his eyes. The death of the old Taoist really has something to do with the dog. Hey, the old man dodged very quickly. I didn't kill you with one slap. Let me see how many times you can dodge. Seeing that he didn't die with one slap, Di Jing suddenly became interested. The old man in black robe was in a state of panic, and immediately used his strongest skill, Tongyu Finger, to open the gate of hell and reveal the underworld. A large amount of dead energy was blasted towards Di Jing with great force. The sound was so loud that the smoke rose like a whirlwind, covering the figure as big as a hill. The old man stared at the front just when he felt a little relieved. A terrifying head poked out from the smoke and said fiercely, "Old man, are you tickling me?" In the old man's shocked eyes, a huge shadow fell from the sky. It's over. These were the last two words in the old man in black robe. On the other side, Zhao Hongye was in a state of panic. The person was flying in front, and the soul was chasing behind. But the black shadow standing on the dark cloud was always following behind, and black lightning flashed from time to time. He was in a state of disgrace. He only had one death substitution talisman, which was made by his master Qi Tianxia using the blood of an earth spirit and could withstand a blow from an ordinary person in the tribulation crossing stage. But it was broken by the woman. He only had 3 large teleportation talismans, each of which could teleport 1,000 miles. Now that all 3 were used up, his true energy was about to run out. Seeing the danger behind him getting closer and closer, Zhao Hongye hurriedly asked for help. "Master, save me." Thousands of miles away, in the retreat under the Netherworld sect, Qi Tianxia suddenly opened his eyes. Who dares to kill my disciple? Qi Tianxia immediately calculated Zhao Hongye's location, but found that he was at least 5,000 miles away from him, and he was in retreat now, so he could only pass through the phantom of the token on Zhao Hongye's body. However, this would weaken his strength, and the farther the distance, the weaker his strength. Without giving him time to think so much, a phantom descended immediately. Who are you, chasing my disciple? Qi Tianxia's figure fell beside Zhao Hongye, who was panting in the sky. Seeing the master coming, Zhao Hongye's confidence was immediately full. Master, this woman is chasing me. Please catch her and seal her cultivation. I want to kill her. Zhao Hongye's eyes were cold. Qi Tianxia frowned, staring at the dark cloud not far away. When the dark cloud approached, Qi Tianxia immediately saw the other party's cultivation. Spiritualization stage. No, not the ordinary spiritualization stage. Qi Tianxia frowned, and he felt the power comparable to the fusion stage from Zhang Qianzhou. Who are you, and whose disciple are you? Qi Tianzhi's majestic pressure collided with Zhang Qianzhou's cold murderous intent, and the space seemed to be violently shaken. To be able to cultivate such a disciple, the master behind him must be a great man. Whose disciple is he, and why has he never heard of such a person in the world of immortal cultivation? Without seeing Zhang Qianzhou's moves, Qi Tianxia couldn't figure out who he was from. You are his master. Zhang Qianzhou's eyes were cold and piercing. I am his master, Junior, tell me whose disciple you are. Qi Tianxia said in an unyielding tone. Zhang Qianzhou looked at him with bloodthirsty murderous intent. Hey, since you are his master, you deserve to die too. How dare you? No one dares to talk to me like this in all these years. Qi Tianxia frowned and shouted angrily, and the might of heaven pressed on him. This pressure had no effect on Zhang Qianzhou. Old man, stop talking nonsense, you dare to bark at a shadow. Zhang Qianzhou's cold eyes flashed with black light, and the sky was covered with dark clouds in an instant. With a finger, many thick black lightnings came to kill, and this blow like a demon made the void roar. Qi Tianzhi's face changed. He didn't expect this girl to start a fight as soon as she said it. He reacted quickly and immediately slapped a palm in response, and a majestic blow went straight into the sky. Boom! The terrifying power exploded between heaven and earth. At the moment of the fight, Qi Tianzhi's face changed, and his power was actually crushed by the black thunder. The phantom on his body cracked, as if it would dissipate in the next second. Qi Tianxia was so shocked that he could not be described in words. His phantom had at least the strength of the early stage of the void realm, but now it was suppressed by a girl in the late stage of the spiritualization realm. The terrifying black thunder swept over like a calamity. Die! Zhang Qianzhou approached and stepped on one foot. Rumble! The surging wrath of thunder was one-sided, and in an instant, the phantom of Qi Tianxia was smashed into pieces. I'll give you one last word. I killed all your disciples. I will kill you in 5 years. Zhang Qianzhou's cold words echoed in the sky, and she knew that Qi Tianxia would definitely hear them. Zhao Hongye, who was gloating on the side, was completely dumbfounded. His master couldn't get any benefit from this woman of unknown origin. Zhang Qianzhou didn't waste time talking to this person. The black lightning on his fingertips instantly turned Zhao Hongye into ash. In the Tianwu dynasty, Wen Yuning buried her head in Shen Shuchu's arms. With tears streaming down her face, she murmured in thought, Mr. Shen, it would be great if you still had a heartbeat. The underground retreat of the Nether sect. Boom! Qi Tianzhi's face was frighteningly gloomy. Veins on his forehead bulged, and his eyes were burning with anger, as if he was about to erupt. The air around him seemed to be distorted by his anger, and invisible pressure was agitated. Since Qi Tianxia took charge of the Nether sect, no one has dared to speak to him like this for many years. This time, he suffered such a big loss at the hands of a junior. If this were to be spread out and known by his peers, wouldn't they laugh their teeth off? The disciple he accepted was also killed under his nose, which was clearly a slap in the face of Qi Tianxia. What's more, this junior girl is the culprit who has been hunting down his sect disciples in recent years. He also arrogantly threatened to kill him in 5 years, with a sneer on Qi Tianzhi's lips. In Qi Tianzhi's view, killing him in 5 years is simply a pipe dream. However, from Zhang Qianzhou's terrifying black lightning method, Qi Tianxia did not know which person's method it was. However, this is no longer important to the already furious Qi Tianxia. If she provokes the Netherworld sect, she will have no place to stay in the world. Qi Tianxia sneered, with ridicule and disdain in his eyes, and then a black iron token appeared in his hand. In an instant, all the information about Zhang Qianzhou's appearance and cultivation turned into information reflected in it. At his level, as long as he saw the real face, he could easily replicate it. No matter who it is, if you capture this woman alive, you will be rewarded with a heavenly level divine weapon, and if you kill this woman, you will get the 8-turn Qingli red fire pill. Qi Tianzhi's voice fell in it. At the same time, all the disciples of the Netherworld sect received this message. It instantly caused a great sensation. The Netherworld Hunting Order has been activated. You actually rewarded a heaven-grade divine weapon. The sect master is so generous. The heaven-grade divine weapon is at least usable by the Void Realm. There is also the 8-turn glazed red fire pill. It is said that it contains the alien fire from outer space. Swallowing one can increase your cultivation by 100 years. It would be great if these 2 things were given to me. A disciple said with envy. Don't dream. You don't even take a good look at the content of the task. You can't provoke a spiritual transformation stage. Moreover, a spiritual transformation stage who can give such a generous reward is definitely not an ordinary person. These 2 things can only be used by the Void Realm. It must be that only the Void Realm and above can receive them. The disciple next to him sneered. No matter how you think about it, it won't work. The shocked disciple retorted unconvinced. I want to see when you die. Qi Tianxia looked at the Netherworld Hunting Order that was sent out and said grimly. In the world of immortal cultivation, it is not only the Netherworld sect that has a hunting order, almost every major sect has such means. Whenever there is a blind person who provokes the sect, a similar wanted order will be issued. If there is no strong backer to protect him, the end is a dead end. And tasks with large rewards like this are not only accepted by disciples of the sect. Once the news is spread, other demon sects can also accept it, and they can receive rewards as long as the task is completed. Of course, if there are righteous sects that are greedy for this reward, they can also accept the tasks of the demon sect. Basically, Qi Tianxia does not need to take action personally, he is also sure that Zhang Qianzhou will not escape. After that, Qi Tianxia contacted the fairy Xiu of Shuiyu Palace through the communication device. If I remember correctly, this person has been targeting the cultivators of Shuiyu Palace. Killing Zhao Hongye did not eliminate Zhang Qianzhou's killing intent, but instead made the desire for killing infinitely magnified in his heart. After returning to the Tianwu dynasty, Di Jing turned back into a dog and lay quietly at the gate with his head drooping. Seeing Zhang Qianzhou coming back, Di Jing immediately acted like a good dog and wagged his tail to greet him. Zhang Qianzhou ignored it and looked around but didn't see Wen Yuning's figure. His eyes suddenly became cold. The exquisite curves wrapped in the black tights exuded coldness, like a cold knife in winter walking towards the courtyard. Mr. Shen, why don't you accept me? Is it because I didn't do well enough? Yu Ning really misses you. Wen Yuning's crystal tears wet Shen Shuchu's clothes. She muttered words full of longing and love, wanting to express the love in her heart in this way. Wen Yuning hoped that Shen Shucho could respond to her at this moment, even if it was a cold and ruthless rejection. Her infatuated eyes quietly stared at the smooth, white and cold face. Thinking back to the scene he had just seen when he entered the room, Wen Yuning felt a little. The deer bumps into each other, and the feeling of being ready to move arises. Wen Yuning closed her eyes slightly and brought her fragrant lips to Shen Shucho's pale lips. The lips slowly came together, and Ning couldn't help but tremble slightly when she heard the words. Her eyes were filled with misty moisture, and the sides of her cheeks were flushed. The tip of the fresh, smooth and moist tongue gently stirred, and the entrance was filled with ice-cold coolness. Wen Yuning did not care to taste this hard-won opportunity gently and slowly. Wen Yuning looked very young, pure and charming, and at this moment all her love was poured into her. As everyone knows, there are a pair of invisible eyes in the sky watching complicatedly. Slowly, the light breeze and drizzle at the beginning turned into a violent storm, and Wen Yuning's movements became more and more violent. The moist and smooth tongue seems to want to explore deeper places. Wen Yuning was reluctant to let go. She knew this was her only chance. Otherwise, Wen Yuning would never have this chance with Zhang Qianzhou by her side. Just when Wen Yuning became more greedy and wanton, a cold and biting murderous intent locked onto him. Wen Yuning opened her mouth and looked back, only to see Zhang Qianzhou's figure quietly appearing not far away. Those dark abyss-like eyes were like the desolate polar night, cold and dead. Zhang Qianzhou is back. Wen Yuning didn't feel any shame at being discovered, she smiled with a hint of unfinished meaning on her face. The air seemed to freeze at this moment, and the extreme coldness reached its lowest point. The two girls just looked at each other. Wen Yuning, you are looking for death. After all, Zhang Qianzhou couldn't hold it back. The body turned into a ghostly black shadow, and one hand pinched Wen Yuning's fragile snow neck. The black lightning turned into silk threads and wrapped around Wen Yuning, like a poisonous snake spitting out letters and biting up. Severe pain spread throughout her body instantly, and Wen Yuning's beautiful face was twisted together in pain. After torturing Wen Yuning for a whole stick of incense, Zhang Qianqiu coldly threw her to the ground. During the process, Zhang Qianqiu had been suppressing his murderous intention. She didn't expect that Wen Yuning would touch her bottom line while she was away from this place. If it weren't for her husband's sake, Zhang Qianqiu would have sent her to Wangquan Road. Zhang Qianqiu can still understand the pain and unwillingness of this kind of unrequited love, but her husband can only be his, and she will never allow others to touch it even if it is a corpse. This time, she should teach Wen Yuning an unforgettable lesson. Wen Yuning didn't say a word from beginning to end. At this moment, she was like a withered flower, lovable. Leave here within an hour. Even if you meet Mr. next time, I will kill you. Zhang Qianqiu took control of Shen Shuqiu with his spiritual consciousness and walked out without saying a word. Actually, you can kill me now. I don't regret being killed by you. Wen Yuning laughed miserably. She is now living like a zombie. Being trapped in an emotionless cage all day long, even my closest sister has changed. I have been relying on hatred to hold on, until today this hatred has a spark of hope. Wen Yuning had a strong intuition in her heart that Zhang Qianqiu would definitely complete a bloody baptism and liquidation. Before that, she was willing to die in Zhang Qianqiu's hands, because this could be regarded as a kind of atonement for Wen Yuning's indirect death of Shen Shuqiu. Zhang Qianqiu didn't reply and walked out of the door holding Shen Shuqiu's cold body. An unexpected figure was waiting in front of the door at this moment. Looking at this woman with a cold face and a very similar look to Wen Yuning, Zhang Qianqiu instantly knew that this person was Wen Qingning. The cold and emotionless eyes just glanced past him, and then the figure disappeared from the spot. Di Jing shook his head and flew into the clouds. Wen Qingning, who was glanced at, felt as if she was being stared directly at by a demon in the abyss. The terrifying pressure made her unable to move. Even though she practiced Taisheng Wangqinglu, she could clearly feel the fear in her heart. She came to pick up Wen Yuning on the order of Fairy Xiao, and learned that Zhao Hongye was actually dead. Wen Qingning did not suspect that this was Wen Yuning's method at first, but when she saw this woman with a strong sense of oppression all over her body, Wen Qingning understood everything instantly. If such a powerful existence wanted to attack him, he would be wiped out in an instant. Zhao Hongyi's death must be related to this person, and her delay in going in was because she sensed an aura in the other courtyard that frightened her. Wen Qingning felt that this aloof woman and the man beside her seemed familiar, but she couldn't remember them for a while. The two of them were in a mess. Wen Qingning walked into the courtyard and saw Wen Yuning, who was covered in wounds, and frowned. What's going on? Wen Yuning saw that the person who came was her sister, and instead of responding directly, she asked, "Why are you here?" "My mother asked me to take you back, you'd better think about how to explain." Wen Qingning said lightly. "Explain." Wen Yuning chuckled, and her already pale face became even more pale. "I don't need to explain to anyone, so let's go back." Wen Yuning knew that she couldn't avoid it, so she simply faced it calmly. Wen Qingning's expression changed slightly, and she felt that her sister seemed to have changed a little. "You haven't told me what's going on. Is Zhao Hongyi's death related to you?" Wen Qingning continued to ask. "My dear sister, are you questioning me?" Wen Yuning raised her eyes and looked over. "No, I just want to know what's going on so that I can explain it to mother." Wen Qingning's cold eyes fluctuated a little. Mother, mother. Her sister, who had been close to her since childhood, was completely controlled. Wen Yuning laughed bitterly in her heart. "Sister, don't you know those two people?" Wen Yuning didn't answer directly, but asked with a hint of expectation in her eyes. She hoped that her sister could still remember the person who saved them in front of the dilapidated temple. Wen Qingning frowned slightly. "What does this mean? Should I know them?" Hearing this, Wen Yuning's face showed disappointment. "Let's go," Wen Yuning said calmly. Wen Qingning saw this micro-expression and was even more confused, but she had to follow him when she saw that Wen Yuning had no intention of saying anything more. At this moment, Zhang Qianqiu was no longer outside, and Wen Yuning smiled helplessly. After hearing what Zhang Qianqiu said about leaving here within an hour, Wen Yuning did not stop and took the magic weapon to leave here. Neither of the two sisters on the magic weapon spoke, and Wen Qingning had been thinking about the man and woman she had seen. She seemed to know each other before, and there was a faint sense of familiarity, but she couldn't remember it. The more she wanted to figure it out, the more irritated Wen Qingning became, and even the supreme forgetting love record she was practicing showed a slight fluctuation. Wen Qingning was startled and stopped immediately. Rumble. Not far from the Tianwu dynasty, thunder exploded in the sky. Countless black lightning bolts as thick as buckets rushed to fall from the dark clouds in the sky. This terrifying scene was like a natural disaster. Wen Qingning looked back in shock, and it was difficult to describe the scene in her heart. Wen Qingning saw clearly that the rows of houses on both sides of the street were instantly smashed into pieces by the black lightning. Those panicked residents turned into black ashes without even a scream. The once prosperous and solemn palace was also reduced to ruins under the black lightning. Blazing flames filled the ruins, and billowing black smoke rushed into the sky. The entire imperial capital city turned into a doomsday disaster in less than an incense stick. Is she massacring the city? Why do this? Who is this person? Wen Qingning was deeply shocked by Zhang Qianzhou's brutal and violent means. The thinking that had just stopped was once again remembered. Could this terrifying demonic villain be someone she knew before? Wen Qingning only felt the pressure on her from Fairy Xiao. Both of them are different. Fairy Xiao is like a fairy who is not stained by the dust and fire. Her cold temperament makes people look far away. Zhang Qianzhou gave Wen Qingning a more shocking feeling, just like a demon god who walked out of a sea of blood and corpses. Wen Yunning just took a slight look and closed her eyes to rest. She had nothing to miss since she had lost her home. The same idea was exactly the same as Zhang Qianzhou. Zhang Qianzhou did not have a clear distinction between good and evil in her heart. She only knew that she could increase her cultivation through killing and take revenge on the Netherworld sect and the Water Moon Palace as soon as possible. The huge imperial capital could not hold out for long under the bombardment of black thunder. In a short while, Zhang Qianzhou could no longer feel a trace of life from it. Zhang Qianzhou's power was also sublimated, and the bottleneck of cultivation was loosened and broken at this moment. In an instant, countless black lightning flashes bloomed from the inside to the outside on Zhang Qianzhou's body. The blooming black light was centered on Zhang Qianzhou standing in the sky, and spread madly to the distance. The strange vision opened up in the sky, and the dark clouds covered the sky, like a ferocious black dragon bowing its head. For a moment, the endless darkness of the night covered the sky and the earth. Even the sun hanging high in the sky was rendered dark. The overwhelming momentum emerged coldly on Zhang Qianzhou, and his dark eyes were filled with ruthlessness. This vision full of destructive breath instantly attracted the attention of many monks. Many powerful monks felt palpitations and uneasiness in their hearts. Even the old monsters sleeping in the restricted area were awakened, and they spent their original power to deduce for the first time. The result was shocking. In the near future, the whole world will be shrouded in dead silence and ominous darkness, and all creatures will surrender to the vague black shadow. Immediately, these old monsters hurriedly contacted their peers and descendants, and launched all their efforts to find the source of this ominous omen. In the result of the calculation, the date is getting closer and closer. At the same time, in the Ji family Holy Land in the world of immortal cultivation, a handsome young man in a white robe rushed to the family meeting room in a hurry. "Dad, it's not good, it's not good." The young man panted. "What are you so flustered about? Speak slowly without respect." A majestic middle-aged man frowned and scolded. "Dad, the ancestor's grave has been moved." "No, it's the ancestor who sent a message," the young man said without hesitation. "What? The ancestor sent a message?" The middle-aged man's face suddenly became flustered when he heard it. The same thing happened in the strongest sword sanctuary, Taishuanmen. "Master, it's not good, the ancestor has woken up." The other major sects with old monsters were all in such a mess. These ancestors usually fall into a deep sleep, and they will not easily show up unless the sect is on the verge of death. Di Jing, who was lying on the ground, trembling at the sudden change, she was extremely shocked. "Are you still a human? You are already in the fusion stage." "I have been practicing for so many years and am still in the spiritualization stage." "Your cultivation speed is faster than drinking water, you are really a monster that is more annoying than a human." Di Jing suddenly wondered why he was practicing so hard. It was too hard on the dog. No, it was too hard on the tiger. The two girls of the Wen family had already returned to the Water Moon Palace. To Wen Yuning's surprise, Fairy Xiao did not intend to see her but was delayed by something. But she still sent someone to imprison her in the Chigu Xuandong. The Chigu Xuandong is located behind the Water Moon Palace, where disciples who have made serious mistakes are usually imprisoned. There is a cold wind blowing here all year round, and the cultivators who are imprisoned will have their cultivation sealed. If they do not have a strong physique, it is difficult to withstand the bone-chilling cold of the wind. Wen Yuning did not resist at all, and let these disciples lock her up here with special chains, but they did not seal her cultivation. Wen Yuning chuckled. It seemed that Fairy Xiao was afraid that she could not bear the strong wind to shatter her body. There was a hint of reluctance in Wen Qingning's emotionless eyes, but she still did not choose to step forward to stop it. The dead body was broken, and the dead body was broken. The bone-deep cave. Wen Yuning's face was as pale as paper, and her bright eyes were dim as if she had lost her vitality. In a blink of an eye, it had been a month since she left the Tianwu dynasty and was locked up in the bone-deep cave. She suffered from the cold wind every day. Her already fragile body was now like thin paper and would be shattered if she was not careful. During this period, Wen Qingning came to visit several times, just to let her admit her mistakes like Fairy Xiao. But Wen Yuning refused without thinking. No matter how much pain she suffered, she would never compromise and become a person without feelings. Apart from the disciples who delivered meals on time every day, no one else came. Wen Yuning was trapped by the ankles with a special chain, lying on the cold and wet rock wall. Whoosh, whoosh, outside the hanging cave, the cold wind whistled. From time to time, it drilled into the hanging cave and hit Wen Yuning's delicate body full of scars, and the piercing coldness penetrated into the bone marrow. After a month of torture, Wen Yuning's heart was as calm as a pool of dead water without any ripples, and no matter how cold the wind was, it could not compare to the coldness in her heart. Ta ta ta. At this time, footsteps came from outside the hanging cave, falling into Wen Yuning's perception. Wen Yuning thought it was Wen Qingning again, but when the footsteps approached Wen Yuning, she found that the footsteps were a bit messy, and it was obvious that there were two pairs of feet walking. Seeing this, Wen Yuning slightly raised her heavy eyelids and looked at it. Her eyes were dead and gray. I saw a tall and slender figure appear in front of me, with a cold and arrogant face looking down from a high position. The people who came were Fairy Xiao and Wen Qingning, who followed respectfully behind her. Wen Yuning sneered, and it seemed that her mother finally remembered to judge her after a month. Looking at the wounded Wen Yuning, Fairy Xiao's cold and arrogant eyes no longer had the pity she had before. In Fairy Xiao's heart, she only needed an obedient daughter. Wen Yuning's icy spirit body was more suitable for practicing the Supreme Forgetfulness record. But her daughter was always worried about the mortal world and was unwilling to listen to her. At first, Fairy Xiao was still patient, but 7 years later, Wen Yuning had never changed according to her words. On the other hand, Wen Qingning's performance made her more and more pleasing to the eye. A month ago, when Wen Yuning returned to the Tianwu dynasty, she secretly notified Zhao Hongye. Since you are disobedient and unwilling to practice the Supreme Forgetfulness record, you will be betrothed to the person you hate the most. Fairy Xiao believed that Wen Yuning would regret it and come to her. But the development of the matter was beyond her expectation. Zhao Hongye died along with his guards. He died at the hands of a black-clothed female cultivator of unknown origin. This made Fairy Xiao think that this was a trick of Wen Yuning. It was nothing to die of Zhao Hongye, even if this person was Qi Tianjia's apprentice. She and Qi Tianjia had no feelings for each other for a long time. What made Fairy Xiao angry was that she thought this was a resistance launched by Wen Yuning against her. So she was locked up in the Chigu Zan cave as soon as she returned. Later, she was called by the Supreme Elder of the sect, so he didn't come to see her for a long time. As the daughter of this seat, you disappoint me too much. Fairy Xiao said in a cold voice. Wen Yuning sneered at the corner of her mouth and remained silent. A cultivator can never forget the trivialities of the mortal world. I will give you one last chance. Tell me what happened that day and who that woman is. From Qi Tianjia, I learned that the black-clothed woman in the spiritualization stage was the one who had hunted Shuiyu Palace in recent years. Fairy Xiao's cold tone did not allow for rejection. After waiting for a while, Wen Yuning still did not speak. The silent atmosphere seemed to have reached a critical point at this moment, completely igniting the anger in Fairy Xiao's heart. The cold momentum, like the frost in the cold winter, exudes a chilling chill that makes people shudder. Since you are unwilling to speak, I will search your soul myself. Fairy Xiao's tone did not carry a trace of emotion. Wen Yuning raised her head suddenly, her eyes horrified. If her soul was searched, then the information about Zhang Qianzhou would be exposed. No, Wen Yuning shook her head with a sad and beautiful face. Seeing Wen Yuning like this, Fairy Xiao became even more angry and stretched out her hand without waiting for her to refuse. Mother. Wen Qingning behind her looked reluctant and spoke immediately. What, you want to stop me? Fairy Xiao looked at him coldly. If you search her soul, my sister may not be able to hold on. Wen Qingning, she shuddered at being looked at, but still said it with a stiff face. With Wen Yuning's current weak appearance, she could not withstand the forced soul search of Fairy Xiao. I am sure of it. Fairy Xiao said coldly that she would not allow rejection, and her consciousness instantly enveloped Wen Yuning. Then a series of fragmented pictures appeared in Fairy Xiao's eyes. Wen Yuning's body was shaking and spasming constantly, obviously resisting instinctively. Wen Qingning couldn't bear to look directly, and her heart ached slightly, but she still chose to believe Fairy Xiao. After a while, Fairy Xiao gloomily withdrew her consciousness, obviously finding the result she wanted. Wen Yuning was like a candle swaying in the wind, and she collapsed to the ground in an instant, her body still twitching constantly. Wen Qingning wanted to go forward to check, but was stopped by Fairy Xiao's gloomy voice, don't care about her. Wen Qingning immediately froze in place. Fairy Xiao approached Wen Yuning coldly and said, you are still thinking about your man. Do you know that the man could have been saved at the beginning, but I had him killed in the end? Fairy Xiao looked down and said indifferently. After these words came out, Wen Yuning's body trembled even more violently. Wen Yuning's face was pale, and 2 lines of tears slid down her eyelids. Her bloodless lips trembled, and she spent a lot of effort to weakly spit out a few words, why? He is just an ordinary ant, dead is dead, but it's a pity that you can't get rid of your feelings for a mortal. I am so disappointed. Fairy Xiao said coldly. There is another one left named Zhang Qianzhou, right? The Nether sect has issued a hunting order, and I will personally send her down to reunite. The more you care about someone, the more I will destroy her. Fairy Xiao continued indifferently. Don't. Wen Qingning's face was flooded with tears, and she murmured with a hint of pleading in her tone. This miserable look did not cause any ripples in the eyes of Fairy Xiao, and there was no family affection at all. As for you, your life was given by me, and naturally I will take it back, but it's a pity for the Bingpo spirit body. Hearing the 3 words Zhang Qianzhou, Wen Qingning felt a strong sense of familiarity in her heart again. But the next sentence made her face change drastically. Please give me another chance, mother. Wen Qingning immediately knelt down and begged. Fairy Xiao just looked at her coldly and left without looking back. In her heart, Wen Yuning had been sentenced to death, and she could throw away a disobedient daughter at will. Now the most important thing for Fairy Xiao is to eradicate the girl named Zhang Qianzhou. From memory, it is known that Zhang Qianzhou was an ordinary person with no cultivation 7 years ago. And from Qi Tianxia, she learned that this man had the cultivation of the spiritualization stage, which immediately made Fairy Xiao smell a hint of crisis. A person who had been in the spiritualization stage for 7 years was unprecedented in her cognition. Such a potential danger must be eliminated decisively, otherwise there will be endless troubles. Wen Qingning rushed over like crazy, and kept injecting true energy into the dying Wen Yuning. Don't be afraid, Yuning, sister won't let you get hurt. Wen Qingning comforted her while continuously injecting true energy. At this moment, Wen Yuning's body seemed to be pierced by thousands of arrows, her soul and purple palace were broken, and her vitality was rapidly fading. Wen Qingning's face became panic and she murmured, no. Yuning, you can't get hurt, don't scare sister. Sister, stop it, it's useless. Wen Yuning was surrounded by death. Wen Yuning gently hugged the panicked Wen Qingning as if she was in the last moments of life. She said softly, sister. Leave here, leave this place without feelings and never come back. I will be your sister in the next life. Wen Qingning suddenly felt a wet feeling in the corners of her eyes, and crystal tears slowly dripped down. Although you have changed, you are still the sister that Yunning loves the most. It would be great if we could go back to our childhood. Wen Yuning's soft voice was melancholy. Her eyes were filled with nostalgia, but gradually dimmed as if she had lost her soul. It's a pity that I didn't wait for that day after all. Zhang Qianzhou can only rely on you for the rest of his journey. I may be able to beat you once and go to find Master Shen one step ahead. Master Shen, Yunning is here. Wen Yuning's head fell gently on her shoulder, with a smile on her delicate face and her eyes gently closed. No, no, no. Wen Qingning suddenly tried to detect her breath and found that Wen Yunning was completely lifeless at this moment. Tears flowed out like a flood, sliding down her cheeks, and each drop of crystal tear contained endless sadness and pain. Wen Qingning sobbed softly at first, as if she was suppressing the pain in her heart. Gradually, the crying became louder and louder. The sound became louder and louder, and the more shrill and heart-wrenching cries came from the bone-piercing cave. Wen Qingning knelt down on the ground with her body trembling, covering her chest with both hands. It hurt so much inside that she seemed to want to grab the broken heart. At this moment, Wen Qingning was no longer the cold and emotionless person, and at this moment, Wen Qingning turned back into the sister who loved her sister. The supreme forgetful record seemed to be disconnected at this moment, and the bottleneck that had been stuck for a long time suddenly loosened. The golden elixir broke out of the shell and gained a new life, and a mighty power belonging to the nascent soul stage descended on him. I don't know how long it took, and the crying in the bone-piercing cave disappeared. Wen Qingning walked out slowly from it with Wen Yuning's delicate body in her arms. Wen Qingning looked determined, and her eyes hid a sharp coldness. The old man was very angry. Little girl, you can't run away. If we, the 7 evil spirits, are targeting you, you can't escape even if you are at the end of the world. In the blue sky, several black shadows were chasing one after another. Zhang Qianzhou stood in the dark clouds with cold eyes. 7 figures were following quickly behind the dark clouds. Since the slaughter of the Tianwu Emperor's capital, time has passed to 3 months later. During these 3 months, Zhang Qianzhou began to kill and fight endlessly. The cultivation soon reached the late stage of the fusion, and the netherworld hunting order also took effect. Since Qi Tianxia offered a generous reward, even the righteous sect Shuiyu Hall personally offered a bounty. This was the first time that the evil and righteous sects offered a large bounty for one person, which immediately attracted the attention of many cultivators. Many people began to look for Zhang Qianzhou all over the world, but all of them died without exception. Just now, Zhang Qianzhou fought 3 late-stage combined cultivators alone and killed them with a crushing means. Then he was blocked by 7 Dongshu realm cultivators who came. Knowing that they could not confront Zhang Qianzhou head-on, they had to run away. Then a situation of 1 fleeing and 7 chasing began. Zhang Qianzhou's speed always lagged behind the front, and gradually widened the distance. Flying along the way also attracted the attention of other cultivators. Isn't that the 7 devils of Broken Soul Valley? Who are they chasing? A sharp-eyed cultivator recognized the 7 figures following the dark clouds. Zhang Qianzhou was covered in the dark clouds and no one could see his true appearance. You don't even know this. The 7 evils are chasing after the person who is being rewarded by both Shuiyu Palace and Yuming sect. A cultivator nearby explained. The gathered group of cultivators was in uproar. Who is this person? Such a big show. The cultivators began to speculate about Zhang Qianzhou in the dark clouds. Is this little girl born in the year of the rabbit? She runs so fast. The third of the 7 evils gritted his teeth and said, HMPH, don't worry, she can't run away. She's just a fusion stage. The eldest of the 7 evils snorted coldly. Zhang Qianzhou in the dark clouds ahead looked calm, and quickly moved in one direction according to the voice in his heart. 300 miles ahead is the restricted area of heavenly thunder and disaster, go there directly. This chase immediately attracted more cultivators to come and watch. Boom! Soon, a minefield of red, purple and blue mixed appeared in Zhang Qianzhou's field of vision. Without hesitation, Zhang Qianzhou plunged in. As soon as he entered the heavenly thunder tribulation land, Zhang Qianzhou felt a kind of intimacy as if he was back home. The 7 evil spirits chasing behind him hurriedly stopped. Is this little girl crazy? She dares to enter the heavenly thunder tribulation land. The second brother looked incredulous. The remaining 6 evil spirits were also shocked. There are many forbidden areas in the world of immortal cultivation. Some of the forbidden areas that are not very dangerous will be chosen by the ancestors of some large sects as sleeping places. Of course, there are also forbidden areas with a high risk coefficient, and no one dares to enter. The heavenly thunder tribulation land happens to be one of the high-risk forbidden areas, and it ranks high. The area within a radius of 100 miles is covered by thunderclouds, and from time to time, 3-color thunder falls like a rain curtain. The cultivators will go around this place, and no one dares to guarantee that they will be struck into ashes while walking. Let alone ordinary cultivators, even those in the Mahayana period dare not guarantee that they can persist in the thunder here. Almost no cultivator in the world of immortal cultivation dared to enter here. Now get out of the dark clouds and use your heavenly demon void thunder record to absorb the heavenly thunder here. The voice in Zhang Qianzhou's heart continued. Outside the heavenly thunder tribulation field, a huge crowd of people surrounded it. The next moment, a woman with a cold expression walked out of the dark clouds in the field of vision, facing the bombardment of 3-color heavenly thunder. This scene immediately shattered everyone's jaws, and they all stared at it intently as if they had seen a ghost. Zhang Qianzhou was surrounded by black thunder, and the dazzling 3-color heavenly thunder broke through the sky and fell from the thundercloud. These heavenly thunders seemed to have found their destination and rushed to bombard Zhang Qianzhou, and were absorbed by the black lightning the moment they touched their bodies. She is absorbing those heavenly thunders, this is impossible. The head of the 7 evils widened his eyes and said in disbelief. This scene, which is rare in the ages, shattered the cultivators' understanding of heavenly thunder. Some even doubted whether this was still a human being. Could it be some demon beast that had been sleeping for 1,000 years? This included Di Jing, who was trembling in the dark clouds. Listening to the roar of thunder in his ears, his mind seemed to be scattered. It was getting more and more. I can't see through this master. What kind of person is he? Outside the heavenly thunder tribulation land, a cultivator took out a photo stone to record this rare scene, and the other cultivators followed suit. At this moment, Zhang Qianzhou seemed to have a bottomless black hole on his body, absorbing the power of the 3-color thunder. Endless thunder power poured into his body, and the lightning surrounding his body seemed to be able to shatter even the void. The shackles of cultivation snapped off under the power of thunder. Early stage of the void, middle stage of the void, late stage of the void, early stage of the tribulation. Boom! A terrifying thunderstorm swept around Zhang Qianzhou, and the black lightning formed a large shadow. It seemed that even the space could not withstand this destructive force and twisted. The sky and the universe once again showed a suffocating vision, and the boundless darkness blocked the entire world. The terrifying breath of world destruction pressed on the hearts of every cultivator. After a moment, the movement in the thunder tribulation land disappeared. Zhang Qianzhou opened his black eyes and looked around at everyone. His violent aura was surging, and his desire to kill arose spontaneously. In an instant, he stepped out of the thunder tribulation land. The black thunder on Zhang Qianzhou's fingertips surged, and in an instant, the violent thunder force tore the void apart. The dark black thunder instantly blasted the leader of the 7 evils into ashes. The speed was so fast that there was no time to dodge, and it was turned into nothing under the strong force. The remaining 6 people were shocked, and they had no intention of fighting when they saw Zhang Qianzhou in front of them, who looked like a demon god descending to the world. The pressure from the tribulation crossing period was like an insurmountable gap that suppressed the hearts of several people. Escape! Someone shouted and hurriedly fled to the distance. He almost used all his strength, wishing he could grow 2 more legs. Boom! It's too late to leave now, Zhang Qianzhou said coldly. Then the lightning around him condensed into lightning spears and burst out in the direction of escape. The terrifying murderous intent locked onto several people, leaving them nowhere to hide. In the blink of an eye, the slowest of the 7 evil spirits, the old 7th, died on the spot, his flesh and blood exploded in the thunder. The remaining 5 people felt cold in their hearts, and seeing that they could not escape, they had to work together to resist. Boom! The lightning spears hit the defenses of several people with overwhelming force. A deafening roar broke out between heaven and earth, and the shocking thunder aftermath spread far away, and some low-level cultivators exploded into blood mist on the spot. Where the lightning spears exploded, there was only a huge deep pit, and the 7 cave virtual realm cultivators in the Broken Soul Valley were completely wiped out. The faces of the other cultivators who were watching the excitement changed, and they fled like birds and beasts. In the dark clouds hanging above their heads, black lightning flashed endlessly. In an instant, the earth was full of scars and pits and scorched earth everywhere. The monks who were watching the excitement in the last second were all killed by the dark thunder bombardment in the next second. Only a few people escaped with the secret treasure. After solving this matter, Zhang Qianqiu instantly sensed that there were 2 dangerous figures in the distance rushing towards this side at a high speed. Without hesitation, Zhang Qianqiu hid in the dark clouds and left this place quickly. When Qi Tianxia and Fairy Xiu came here, they could only see this horrible scene. The air was full of the smell of burning, and there was not even a complete bone. Qi Tianxia had a gloomy face and did not speak. This time he seemed to have really provoked a monster. Next, it depends on us to take action. She must die, otherwise you and I will not be at peace. Fairy Xiu said coldly. Qi Tianxia nodded with a gloomy face. The scene that happened in the restricted area of the Heavenly Thunder Tribulation Land was spread by those who escaped by chance through the image stones. Zhang Qianqiu's figure appeared in the minds of many cultivators. Finally, these image stones were passed to the hands of those major sects, and the old monster who had made a prediction immediately knew that the terrifying figure in the future was this person. For a time, the news that Zhang Qianqiu was the future world-destroying demon king spread rapidly in the world of immortal cultivation. Then several major holy places jointly took the lead in looking for Zhang Qianqiu's traces and tried to kill him. Zhang Qianqiu naturally became the enemy of the entire world of immortal cultivation. After the battle, Zhang Qianqiu became famous in the whole world of immortal cultivation. He provoked all the sects to hunt him down with his own strength. Time flies, and it has been 3 years. Zhang Qianqiu is just in his prime. During this period, the whole world of immortal cultivation was filled with a haze. Countless sects were flattened by Zhang Qianqiu, and the figure standing in the dark clouds holding the world-destroying black thunder became a lingering nightmare for many people. Most cultivators would tremble all over when they heard this name, and they could not hide their fear. Among them, the number of cultivators who died at the hands of Zhang Qianqiu was as numerous as the sands of the Ganges River. The word, killing, has almost become a synonym for Zhang Qianqiu, and his terrifying fighting power is frightening. In this huge hunt for Zhang Qianqiu, the lowest level that can participate is the Void Realm, and some sect leaders have also participated. Among them, some old monsters in the Mahayana period are even willing to break the ground to suppress Zhang Qianqiu with tough means. But they were forcibly resolved by Zhang Qianqiu with strange means several times. It has been a year since the last encirclement and suppression war. After that, Zhang Qianqiu's figure seemed to have evaporated from the world and there was no news at all. No matter how he deduced it, he could not figure it out. Boom! In the deepest dark ruins of the Tianlai Jade, Zhang Qianqiu floated in the air in a tight suit with his eyes closed, and his whole body was surrounded by black thunder that could destroy everything in the world. Above his head, there was an endless flow of 3-colored thunder power that surrounded and entered his limbs and bones. Zhang Qianqiu was like an ancient beast sleeping underground at this moment, full of the breath of destroying everything. His closed black eyes contained endless power, and this majestic energy was still rising. From time to time, the sound of thunder came from the dark ruins, as if it was foreshadowing that the Lord of Destruction Thunder would wake up at any time. Not far away, Di Jing's huge body like a hill was crawling on the ground, blocking the entrance to the dark ruins. In the past 3 years, Di Jing has been following Zhang Qianqiu through one fight after another. There were several times when it almost fell, but fortunately Zhang Qianqiu was able to save it every time. The original cultivation level of the spiritualization stage was also forcibly raised to the tribulation stage by Zhang Qianqiu. After being severely injured by many Mahayana cultivators last time, the master and the servant hid in the Heavenly Thunder Tribulation Land to recover. The cultivators in the outside world would never have thought that there was a dark ruin space deep in the Heavenly Thunder Tribulation Land. Here Zhang Qianqiu could safely absorb the 3-color heavenly thunder in the restricted area. Waiting for one day to appear again. Shuiyu Palace. You really didn't disappoint me. You broke through to the spiritual transformation stage in just 3 years of seclusion. Fairy Xiao looked at the plain-clothed woman in front of her with a cold and arrogant figure. Wen Qingning's cold face was expressionless. She said in a cold voice, "Thank you, mother, for your cultivation. Yes, you are much better than your disobedient sister." Fairy Xiao stared at Wen Qingning's eyes. But there was no ripple in Wen Qingning's eyes, as if Wen Yuning's death had no effect on her. "From now on, you will serve as the punishment elder of the inner sect of Shuiyu Palace and take up the post tomorrow." Fairy Xiao said calmly and left the place of retreat. After that back figure left, Wen Qingning's calm eyes bloomed with a cold light. In a voice that only she could hear, she said, "Yuning waits for sister, otherwise I will send her to repent in a while." Since Wen Yuning's death, Wen Qingning's frozen heart has been completely awakened. All the memories of the past emerged in her mind, and the seeds of hatred were transferred to Wen Qingning's heart. The supreme forgetting love record follows the ruthless sword path, and it can only increase greatly after cutting off one's 7 emotions and 6 desires to reach a state of transcendence from the world. But Wen Yuning's death aroused the frozen emotions in Wen Qingning's heart. In this extreme repentance, another brand new way appeared in her heart. Hate and regret for oneself become the way of salvation. She wanted to redeem herself and Wen Qingning, and the two paths restrained each other in her heart. And the path of redemption happened to be in the ruthless sword path, or in other words, the end of ruthlessness is love. Wen Qingning only needed to practice desperately to swing the sword of revenge at that unattainable figure. In the blink of an eye, another 10 years had passed in the world of immortal cultivation. People gradually forgot about Zhang Qianqiu, and Wen Qingning's figure appeared in front of everyone again. The fairy-like jade-colored appearance and the cold temperament suddenly. At that time, she attracted the pursuit of many male cultivators. She was famous in the various sects of the cultivation world for her strength in the fusion period, and she was able to cut the cave void with one sword. She was praised by the cultivators of the same level as the title of the first fairy in the cave void realm. Fairy Xiao also valued her more and intended to train Wen Qingning to be the next sect master. She was like a puppet and had to follow the wishes of Fairy Xiao in everything. This was exactly what Wen Qingning wanted. On the surface, she was still the obedient daughter as before, but she had been accumulating strength behind the scenes. Wen Qingning sat in the clouds with a graceful figure, and her temperament was like a bright moon, emitting brilliance. At this moment, Wen Qingning seemed to have something in her eyes and looked into the distance. "Where are you, Zhang Qianqiu?" In the past 7 years, Wen Qingning has never given up looking for Zhang Qianqiu. But her figure seemed to have evaporated from the world, without a trace. Just as Wen Qing was thinking about 1,000 things, he didn't notice that the originally clear blue sky had become a little gloomy at this moment. In the dark ruins of the earth calamity by the thunder, Zhang Qianqiu opened his eyes leisurely, and there was a dark abyss in his eyes, and he was surrounded by a dark sea of thunder. The surrounding thunder power was agitated in the dark ruined space, and was excited because of Zhang Qianqiu's awakening. The fierce momentum filled with destructive silence was like a peerless demon god who had awakened across the ages. The moment the abyss-like black eyes opened, the sky and the earth changed color. You are now a half-step emperor, and you only need the last step to achieve the position of the eternal emperor. At the moment Zhang Qianqiu woke up, the voice in his heart sounded lukewarmly. "How long have I been asleep?" Zhang Qianqiu said lightly. 10 years. Zhang Qianqiu said. "Has it been so long? You have now absorbed all the 3-color thunder power of the heavenly thunder tribulation land. Now it's your turn to be born. Go, send down your destructive thunder power, vent your anger, and use the world's cultivators as nourishment to achieve your position as the great emperor." The voice gradually became crazy. Zhang Qianqiu's eyes were agitated with thunder. "Can I really revive the master if I become the great emperor?" "Yes, the power of the great emperor is beyond your imagination. It is easy to revive a corpse without a soul." The voice in the heart followed. Zhang Qianqiu never forgot this point. She never asked the source of the voice or what the purpose was. Zhang Qianqiu only had 2 things in mind: revenge and reviving the master. "Okay." Zhang Qianqiu said nothing more. He stepped on the ground and appeared above the heavenly thunder tribulation land. Dark clouds appeared out of nowhere and enveloped her. Zhang Qianqiu came to Shen Shuqiu, gently held his cold hand, and said affectionately, "Sir, Kiancho will come to bring you back to life. From now on, it will be just the two of us together, and we will find a new home. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."